Chapter 2879. And this saber. Zhou Heng took out a broken saber and handed it to Ling Han. The 7 steps are indeed extraordinary. The 3 of us worked together and spent a lot of effort to dissolve the murderous aura within and make it concentrate. Once it's activated, the murderous aura will gush forward. Caught off guard, the 5 steps will be slightly affected, but only slightly, Lin Xiaoyang continued. And this is because the saber is broken, and its power is no longer as strong. Otherwise, even we can't do anything. A complete 7 steps treasure tool contained the will of a 7 steps elite, which could suppress the heavens. But now that the saber was broken, and the will of a heavenly venerable had long since died, there was a chance for the 6 steps to refine it. Ling Han took the saber. Many thanks, seniors. He also took out some things wrapped in stone, and gave them to Zhou Heng and the others. Those were the heavenly venerable symbols he had obtained. He who knew, and the Empress all had them, so he did them a favor. This broken saber was so precious that even Xianqihu specially left someone to ask for it. But Zhou Heng and the others spent effort to refine it, and then returned it to him. In comparison, the 3 of them were really noble. Zhou Heng and the others laughed loudly, and didn't act pretentious. They first reflected these heavenly venerable symbols with the heaven ring, and took those that they didn't have. Otherwise, if they directly absorbed them into their consciousness, and then separated them, it would be harmful to themselves. After their division, there were still 3 heavenly venerable symbols left, which all 3 of them already had. Ling Han put them away again, leaving them for his beloved daughter and son. Seniors, do you think there's another plane beneath this one? He suddenly had a strange thought. We've also thought of this question, but the resources here haven't been divided yet, so we haven't taken any action to explore, Zhou Heng said. If there's another plane below this one, then things are really big. Planes stacked on top of one another. This was something that had never happened before. What caused it? Not to mention anything else. Merely the stacking of 2 planes was already inexplicable. Logically speaking, at least several hundred 7 steps would be needed to forcefully stack high-level planes. But since ancient times, how could there be so many 7 steps? The 7 steps were indestructible and would never die. How was it possible for hundreds of 7 supremes to suddenly disappear? Perhaps a great secret that can shake the origin world is hidden here, Chu Hao said leisurely. After talking for a while, Ling Han took his leave. He played with the broken sword, familiarizing himself with how to use it. It was very simple. As long as one activated it with intrinsic strength, the broken blade would display its might. However, because it was already damaged, it was impossible for it to display the might of 7 steps. It could only display the might of Ling Han himself. However, this blade had killed far too many experts. As long as one aimed it in one direction, and activated it a second time with their will, a terrifying baleful aura would rush out and shake one's soul. This isn't enough to kill 5 steps, but it's enough to buy me a chance to escape, Ling Han thought to himself. He had killed Xianqihu's servant, so Xianqihu would definitely not let this go. In a battle of the same level, Ling Han wasn't afraid of Abandon the Tiger or Abandon the Dragon. However, his opponent was at the 4th step, and his battle prowess should have soared to the 5th step. This kind of expert was definitely not someone that Ling Han could deal with right now. He needed some means to save his life. Ling Han didn't move out for the time being. These years, he, the Empress, and Hunyou all used great medicine to increase their cultivation, and didn't cultivate it themselves. So it was inevitable that there would be situations where their foundations were unstable. Thus, they all went into seclusion to stabilize their foundations. Especially the Empress and Hunyou. They still wanted to push aside the shackles of their cultivation level, and ascend to the next level. As for Ling Han, though he had also reached the peak stage of the 2nd step, there was still some way to go before he broke through. Moreover, because there was really too much power of the plane in his body, even this last part of the journey would take a long time to complete. It couldn't be helped. This was the price that had to be paid for strength. Several 100 million years later, Hunyou and the Empress both broke through. One reached the 4th step, and the other reached the 3rd step. The 4th step was a dividing line. Below the 5th step, The number of heavenly venerables of the infinite planes was as many as hundreds of thousands. This was a very terrifying number, but from the 5th step onwards, the number of heavenly venerables began to decrease sharply. Now there were about 1,000 people at the 5th step, over 100 at the 6th step, and even fewer at the 7th step. The number could be counted on 2 hands. There was no other reason. From the 4th step onwards, the repulsion of the power of essence was too strong. Out of 10 fourth steps, it was impossible to sense new essence particles. So how could they talk about communicating and advancing further? Thus, the orange great medicine that could allow heavenly venerables to sense essence particles was so precious. And if one wanted to advance from the 5th step to the 6th step, it probably needed a red great medicine. But until now it hadn't appeared. Ling Han also stabilized his cultivation level, but there was still a long way to go before he broke through. If he wanted to slowly cultivate by himself, not to mention an epoch, it would definitely take 1 or 2 trillion years. He still needed a large amount of supreme great medicine. At most, he would have to go into seclusion a few more times to stabilize his foundation. Father, grandfather. Ling Han had just come out of seclusion when he saw Ling Jianshui and Ling Fifan both come over. You finally know to come back. He shook his head. This pair of father and son traveled together and didn't even want him, their own father and grandfather. Hee. Ling Jianshui and his son both laughed and talked about their experiences over the years. Ling Jianshui had already advanced to the 2nd step, while Ling Fifan had just become a heavenly venerable. The old Ling family's genes were too good. However, the bloodline advantage only stopped at the 3rd generation. Ling Fifan's children weren't so monstrous, and they hadn't become celestial kings yet. This great-grandson was only born a few 100 million years ago. At that time, Ling Han and Ling Fifan were both outside, so Ling Han hadn't seen this great-grandson yet. Children and grandchildren have their own lives, so he shouldn't interfere in everything. Ling Han said to himself, calming down his desire to guide his great-grandson, and only asking about his situation. This great-grandson was called Ling Tianhua. His talent in martial art wasn't bad, but it was only good. He hadn't reached the monstrous level. Compared to him at the same age, there was no need to mention Ling Han. Ling Jianshui and Ling Fifan were far ahead of him. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh. If the bloodline advantage could be maintained, wouldn't all the children and grandchildren of the 7-step forces become heavenly venerables? If you have any requests, just say it. He glanced at Ling Jianshui and his son. Father, look at what you're saying. Can't we come to see you if we have nothing to do? Ling Jianshui hurriedly said. Ling Han stood up. I'm very busy. If you don't have anything to do, then I'll continue my closed-door training. Don't. Ling Fifan hurriedly pulled Ling Han, and then said to Ling Jianshui. Father, I knew it. Grandpa is so wise and powerful. How could he not see through your little tricks? Don't flatter me, Ling Han said. It's like this. Ling Jianshui said. When we were traveling before, we found a large mining area with 10 veins. However, before we could dig, another group of people came. Our strength is equal. If we fight to the death, both sides will suffer. Therefore, we decided to settle it with a martial arts competition. Let's fight 10 rounds. The side that wins 1 round will get a vein of ore. Father, I came back to ask for reinforcements. End of chapter. Chapter 2882. Hearing Ling Han's words, the people on the opposite side quickly shook their heads. Mi Wenbai was not Ling Han's opponent, so anyone who faced Ling Han would be defeated in seconds. If Ling Han were to fight 3 more rounds, it would be a matter of 3 more punches, and 3 mineral veins would be taken away by Ling Han. Ling Han, I remember. Finally, the person who had been familiar with Ling Han's name clapped his hands. He finally remembered who Ling Han was. This was the person who had created history and had invincible courage. Ling Han couldn't help but sigh. Why couldn't the winner fight consecutively? What kind of broken rule was this? He walked back, and the people on his side still hadn't come back to their senses. Their scalps were still numb. Next, Ling Jianshui went on stage, taking advantage of the lingering power of Ling Han's last game. And the opponent was still in shock. He also won a game. But in the 9th and 10th games, the opponent finally came back to his senses and won 2 games in a row. Therefore, out of the 10 mineral veins, the opponent took 8, and Ling Han could only take 2. Ling Han couldn't help but sigh. He had never suffered a loss all the way. He had always taken advantage of others, but now he actually lost. Out of the 10 mineral veins, he only took 2. It was a great shame. There was no other way. Who asked his son to be stubborn and pedantic? However, which mineral vein belonged to whom? At this time, Ling Han behaved very strongly. He didn't care what others said at all. He directly chose 2, and no one could object. He said that if anyone had an opinion, they would talk after defeating him. Who dared to fight with him? Mi Wenbai still hadn't woken up yet. No one objected, so it was decided. Dad, you're not a master of raw gemstones. Why are you fooling around? Ling Jianshui came over. In fact, they had also invited a master of raw gemstones. After all, mineral veins could also be waste ores. So of course, they had to choose the best. However, Ling Han's actions left the primordial gemstone master with no room to play. He kept saying that Ling Han was making trouble. Don't worry about it. Ling Han waved his hand. How could he be reckless? The 2 veins he chose were the best. However, these 10 veins were all very good. None of them were wasted. The next day, everyone started mining. Now that there weren't too many servants available, everyone could only do it themselves. So what if they were Empyreans? They had to personally go and mine the ores. They had agreed that whoever dug it out would be the one who owned it. And the only thing that mattered was luck. Ling Han naturally wouldn't be polite. If he hadn't taken action, these people wouldn't even have been able to get a single vein. He walked from beginning to end and collected a large number of valuable primordial stones into his spatial fairy artifact. After being swept away by him, although there were still some things left, how could there be anything valuable left? Everyone was gloomy. Why was it that after digging for half a day, it was all immortal gold? From time to time, peerless medicines appeared on the opposite side. Although they were only blue and purple, they still made them jealous. It was all Ling Han's fault. He had to choose these 2 lousy veins. They didn't dare to say it, but the primordial gemstone master they had invited was not afraid at all. Primordial gemstone masters had a high status. Relying on the fact that they were now in need, they scolded Ling Han all day long. This annoyed Ling Fifan, who caught him and gave him a good beating. No one stood up for this primordial gemstone master. Although it was Ling Fifan who did it, no one knew if it was Ling Han's idea. Besides, even if it was Ling Fifan's own decision, he was Ling Han's grandson. Who dared to attack him? This made the primordial gemstone master so angry that he left angrily. Standing at the current height of Ling Han, he certainly didn't care about the attitude of a primordial gemstone master toward him. If he was unhappy, he could directly punch him to death. Right now, his heart was on the primordial gemstones that had been dug out, and he was very satisfied. He quietly struck it rich. After excavating all of the ores, he obtained over 20 great medicines and 7 Empyrean symbols. Unfortunately, he already had them. Therefore, he gave all 7 celestial venerable symbols to his son, as well as some of the great medicines. Father, these were all opened by you. Ling Jianshui was stunned. Ling Han nodded. Damn. Who dared to say that his father was being reckless? These harvests were more than the total output of the other 8 veins. Because they only had 2 veins on this side, they were quickly dug clean. Now everyone went to the other side every day. Even if they couldn't get anything, it was good to have a look. This comparison made them furious. How could their harvests be compared? Their complaints also made the people on Mi Wenbai's side laugh. Although they had lost 2 games and lost 2 veins, Ling Han was reckless and directly chose the 2 worst veins, which was equivalent to giving them gifts. This naturally caused Ling Han to become the laughingstock of outsiders and the reproach of his own people. However, Ling Han, his grandfather, and his grandsons had silently struck it rich. There was no need for everyone to know about this, right? Moreover, being thought of as a stone gambling idiot might be able to cheat people. An unexpected thing happened. When all 10 veins were dug out, another vein actually appeared underground. This vein was hidden under the previous 10 veins, which was equivalent to wearing a layer of clothing. It should be known that the celestial venerable stone could isolate the divine sense of a celestial venerable, so no one could detect that there was a vein under the vein. Even Ling Han was blinded by experience. It was not until he saw it with his own eyes that he suddenly realized there was only one vein, so who would it belong to? After knowing how powerful Ling Han was, naturally, no one proposed to use martial arts to decide. Mi Wenbai and the others racked their brains to think of how to occupy this vein. In the end, they decided to gamble on stones with Ling Han. Everyone knew that a primordial gemstone master could only be an immortal king, because the celestial venerable stone had a special isolation effect on celestial venerables, as if heaven and earth hated it, making it impossible for celestial venerables to become primordial gemstone masters. Of course, the celestial venerables did not feel it was a pity. After all, only this place had celestial venerable stones, and one day they would be mined out. Mi Wenbai and the others proposed to use stone gambling, which was naturally firmly opposed by the red-haired men. There were no primordial gemstone masters among them, and they had all been angered by Ling Han. How could they compete? They had to use martial arts to decide. The two sides were in a deadlock until Ling Han spoke up and agreed to stone gambling. If it was to be decided by martial arts, he would not make a move at all, which naturally forced the red-haired men to compromise. Except for Ling Han, who could suppress Mi Wenbai. But if it was stone gambling, they did not have any hope. In fact, they had already lost. But what could they do? Ling Han was so strong. Who dared to oppose him? If it's stone gambling, how do we compete? Ling Jianshui asked on behalf of Ling Han. Let's each choose 3 primordial gemstones, and after cutting them open, we will compare the total value, Mi Wenbai said. Okay. Ling Jianshui agreed on behalf of Ling Han. Mi Wenbai and the others immediately sent out a primordial gemstone master. He was called Master Qian by everyone, and his name was a single word, Wang. He was at the 9th level of heaven, but now he was being treated as a guest of honor by the celestial venerables. Qian Wang was very reserved and said to Ling Han, I won't bully you. I'll allow you to choose 10 stones before competing with me. It was very arrogant, but it was also in line with the character of a primordial gemstone master. They were now too spoiled. Ling Han did not take offense, and smiled faintly. All right. Chapter 2883. When the red-haired man heard Qian Wang's words, hope rose in his heart. What if he was lucky and all 10 pieces came out, adding up to more than Qian Wang? Sometimes, no matter how strong one was, they would still cry when they encountered luck. You choose first, Qian Wang said in an arrogant tone. When he was still a celestial king, he couldn't even see a celestial venerate. But now, he was surrounded by a celestial venerate and treated like an honored guest. This made him feel so good that he was about to ascend to the heavens. Ling Han shook his head. This kind of person did not have great Master Xian Lai's wisdom. He might be able to do whatever he wanted now, but there was a 99% chance that he would die on the streets in the future. Sure, he said nonchalantly as he walked casually. He randomly chose from the vein and dug out 10 raw stones. Qian Wang also walked back and forth a few times before deciding on 3 raw stones. The red-haired man and the others shook their heads. There was definitely no hope. Even a master of raw gemstones had to choose for a long time. But Ling Han just randomly picked 10 stones. How could they be compared? Open the stone, Qian Wang said lightly, putting on airs. Sure. Ling Han opened the stone. His strength was profound, and he knew what was inside like the back of his hand. Therefore, it only took a few breaths of time for the things inside to emerge. It was a great herb, green in color. Damn, when everyone saw this scene, they were all dumbfounded. This was heaven-defying luck. To think that a random rock could produce a supreme medicine. The red-haired man's hope was reignited. The green great medicine was very precious. Even if Ling Han's next 9 raw stones were all useless, he might still be able to win with this great medicine. The corners of Mi Wenbai and the others' mouths twitched. So what if he was a master of raw gemstones? He couldn't resist such good luck, could he? Qian Wang's mouth was half open. He was not a first-generation master of raw gemstones like Master Xian Lai, but a disciple or grand disciple of theirs. He had some skills in stone gambling, but his strength was far inferior to Master Xuanlai's. He knew that there was something in the 3 raw stones he had chosen, but he had no idea what it was. Ling Han's first move was a stalk of great green medicine, which completely disrupted his footing, causing him to start panicking. Ling Han didn't care about him, and continued to cut open the stone. Another batch. Everyone cried out in surprise. The second also produced a great medicine, but its quality was a bit worse, only blue. But with 2 stalks of great medicine placed in front of him, Ling Han was practically already in an invincible position. Mi Wenbai and the others were in despair. What kind of luck did Ling Han have? It was too good. The 3rd, 4th, 5th stones were cut open one after another, and they were all great medicines. Not only were there 2 stalks of green medicine, there was even a stalk of yellow medicine, making everyone's eyes turn red with shock. Qian Wang had already sat down on the ground. Unless he opened 3 Empyrean symbols in a row, he would definitely lose. However, Ling Han activated 4 heavenly venerate symbols in a row, completely cutting off his hopes. I admit defeat, Qian Wang said in a bitter tone. Qian Wang said in a bitter tone. He cast a deep look at Ling Han. This guy had to be pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. If one were to say who had such good luck, he would not believe it even if he twisted his head off. This was already expected, but when they heard Qian Wang personally admit defeat, everyone felt a sense of absurdity. Could it be that Ling Han was also a master of raw stones? But everyone knew that it was impossible for an Empyrean to become a master of raw stones. Absolutely impossible. But to say that Ling Han's luck was heaven-defying, no one would believe it either. Ling Han smiled faintly and did not kill them all. He turned around and said to Ling Jianshui, "What are you waiting for? Hurry up." The red-haired man and the others also seemed to have woken up from a dream. Ling Han had won, so this mineral vein naturally belonged to them, and they could start selecting stones. Wait! Just as they were about to move, they heard a voice that carried an extremely terrifying pressure. Who? Everyone turned their heads and saw 2 people walking over. One of them was only in his 20s. He had a handsome face and a slender figure. Boundless light flowed around him, and his breath was filled with chaotic qi. He was extremely terrifying. The person next to him was only a 9th heaven immortal king. Under his aura, he seemed insignificant, but everyone's eyes were fixed on him. This was because he was the master of raw stones invited by the red-haired man. He had left in anger because of Ling Han. No one expected that not only would he come back, but he had also brought an outsider. Obviously, he didn't come with good intentions. "Who are you?" the red-haired man asked. Mi Wenbai and the others were indifferent. Anyway, this mineral vein already belonged to Ling Han and the others, so they were happy to watch the fun. Bang! The response to the red-haired man was an unstoppable punch from the young man, which directly sent the red-haired man flying. "A mere second step dares to be presumptuous in front of this venerate," the young man said coldly. His gaze swept across, and a terrifying aura circulated, causing everyone to involuntarily lower their eyes, not daring to meet his gaze. "This venerate is Nalanda." He retracted his gaze. "Everything here belongs to this venerate. You can get lost now," Ling Jianshui said to the master of raw stones. "Master Ho, we have an agreement that you must strictly keep this a secret." Master Ho sneered. "You publicly humiliated me, and you still want me to keep this a secret? How ridiculous." Bang! A wave of fist energy surged, and Master Ho immediately turned into a rain of blood. Ling Han retracted his fist and casually brushed it off. This guy was really bold. He killed people on a whim, not giving Nalanda any face at all. Nalanda's face darkened. He was a 4th-step celestial venerate, and he could suppress everyone here with one hand. But Ling Han actually dared to kill people in front of him, and the people he killed were his people. How could he not be angry? He said coldly, "How dare you? You even dare to kill this venerate's people." Pung! Before he could finish speaking, Ling Han had already swung a fist over. "You're courting death," he snorted coldly, and also swung a fist meeting it. In his opinion, the power of his fist energy could instantly destroy Ling Han's attack, and then, without using up his remaining energy, he could continue to attack and blast Ling Han into pieces. Boom! The two forces collided, but the result was completely different from what Nalanda had imagined. His fist energy was destroyed in one blow, and Ling Han's fist energy was still surging over. What? He turned pale with fright. When he looked at Ling Han again, his whole body was glowing with talisman light, and there were more than 100 of them. This boom! The power surged over, and he was instantly blasted into a rain of blood. So what if he had been tempered by 3 kinds of intrinsic power? He could not withstand a single blow. This was the last thought that flashed through his mind. This was a combination of symbols, and the number was astonishing. Nalanda had fallen. Everyone's scalps went numb. So what if Master Ho died? After all, he was just a 9th heaven celestial king, and the so-called Origin Gem Master was just a title that had been put on a pedestal. But Nalanda was a genuine celestial venerate, and his strength was definitely far above everyone else's. Otherwise, it was impossible for him to make everyone tremble in fear with just a look. Such an elite could not even withstand a single blow from Ling Han. Ling Han dispersed the celestial venerate symbols, pretending that nothing had happened. This was not the first time he had killed a 4th step celestial venerate. Chapter 2884. A large amount of life essence entered Ling Han's body, pushing his cultivation forward a little bit. After all, he was at the 4th step, which was equivalent to 2 or 3 green herbs. Oh, I'll take my leave. I have something to do, so I'll be leaving first. Anyway, the ore mine has nothing to do with me, so I won't waste any more time. In a short while, most of the people had left. They were all afraid that Ling Han would suddenly attack them. This guy could even kill someone at the 4th step in an instant, which was too terrifying. Previously, although everyone knew that Ling Han was strong, they believed that they could still contend against him if they joined forces. But now, seeing that even Nalanda had been killed in an instant, they were greatly shocked. They knew that the gap between their strength and Ling Han's was far too wide. Ling Han didn't stop them. He naturally didn't care about these people. But soon, someone came over and said, "Ling Han, you have to be careful. Nalanda has an older brother, who is a 5th step celestial sovereign." The 5th step was only 1 level higher than the 4th step, but it could be said that his strength had increased by leaps and bounds. Ling Han was surprised. These 2 brothers were both celestial sovereigns. One was at the 4th step, while the other was at the 5th step. This was a little shocking. Could it be that their father was at the 7th step? He asked that person in detail, but the answer he got was different. The 2 brothers were actually from ordinary families. They had relied on their own efforts to reach their current heights. If one had to say, it was because Nalanda's older brother, Nalan Xiong, had taken care of his younger brother. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for Nalanda to reach the 4th step. Nalan Xiong was currently exploring a palace with some people. Although it had already been turned into ruins, there was still a palace left. This was enough to show that this palace was extraordinary. Maybe it was a 7th step Dao palace that contained a shocking inheritance. Ling Han nodded to that person and said, "Thank you." That person smiled and said, "I am Yangpe. I hope that I can meet you again in the future." He wanted to form a good relationship with Ling Han. Who knew, he might be able to help him in the future. Besides, he was doing this for free. It was just a piece of information and a clue. He didn't need to pay any price. No problem. Ling Han accepted the favor. Soon, only Ling Han, his grandfather, and his grandson were left in the canyon. Ling Han continued to open the stones. With his grown eyes, the speed at which he opened the stones was, of course, astonishing. Soon, he finished mining the entire vein, and the harvest was astonishing. There were a total of 7 heavenly sovereign symbols, 13 stalks of great herbs, countless immortal metals, and a piece of devouring metal. Ling Han planned to use the devouring metal, which had reached the large success stage, to create a space container. Then, he would add the celestial venerable art to it, and achieve the ultimate defense. It wasn't that he couldn't open up a space inside the divine demon sword, just like the Black Tower in the past. However, a treasured tool that focused on offense was definitely inferior to a treasured tool that focused on defense. Ling Han took 5 of the celestial master symbols, and gave the remaining 2 to Ling Jianshui and his son. All the great medicines were given to his children and grandchildren. With the ability he possessed, obtaining great medicines could be said to be as easy as flipping his hand. Ling Jianshui and his son didn't return to the base. Instead, they continued to explore everywhere. This plain, or rather, the discovery of this overlapping plain, seemed to have contributed a massive treasure to all the Empyreans. Everyone could benefit from it. The opportunity couldn't be missed, and it wouldn't come again. Meanwhile, Ling Han turned around. He wanted to upgrade the devouring metal he had just obtained and refine it into a heavenly venerable treasure. He also wanted to bring bewitching Maiden Ro, Lu Yutong, and the others over. He strode forward, crossing a boundless distance with a single stride. Heavenly venerables ignored regulations, and there were no regulations here either. Even ninth heaven celestial kings could display extraordinary speed. After walking for 3 days, Ling Han's heart suddenly moved, and he stopped in his tracks. "Come have a cup of tea." A powerful voice rang out, carrying with it a domineering tone that brooked no refusal. Ling Han smiled faintly. "Drinking tea requires people. I don't seem to have any interest in you." There was a pavilion ahead, and in the pavilion, there was a person currently drinking tea. His white robes fluttered, and he was handsome and spirited. It was precisely Xian Chihu. "Ha ha ha." Xian Chihu laughed loudly. "You are indeed very courageous. You should know that even fourth step is subservient in front of me, and doesn't even dare to breathe loudly." "Congratulations, you've met your match," Ling Han said calmly. "I can't really be considered a match." Xian Chihu shook his head. "If you were at the fourth step, I might be able to view you as a match, but you're only at the second step. I'm only here to kill you." "Oh, do you dare to fight me at the same level?" Ling Han goaded. "Ling Han, with the height I've reached, goading me will be effective." Xian Chihu smiled. He was already publicly acknowledged as the greatest genius of all time, and it was impossible for him to climb any higher. He also didn't need to worry about falling off his pedestal, so how could he be swayed by his emotions? Ling Han laughed. "Then what's the point of saying all this nonsense? Come, let's fight. You should have accepted my good intentions and helped me search for Orvanes." Xian Chihu shook his head, seeming to feel that it was a pity. "Unfortunately, not only did you not agree, but you even killed my people. So you must die." He attacked. With a flip of his right hand, the heavens trembled. Countless stars were born and destroyed in his hand, and a single breath was equivalent to 10,000 lifetimes. The various marvels of the universe were described, displaying his comprehension of the Tao. This was definitely the battle prowess of a fifth-step Empyrean. Under the flow of his aura, Ling Han didn't even need to face him head-on to know that he was no match for him. There was no way around it. The two of them were 2 whole realms apart, and Xian Chihu was the greatest genius of all time. Even if he wasn't as strong as Ling Han, he wouldn't be much weaker. How could he be a match for him? Ling Han didn't hesitate, and immediately took out his broken saber. A baleful aura surged out, striking at Xian Chihu. This exceeded Xian Chihu's expectations, and he was instantly struck by the baleful aura. Because this wasn't an attack of raw power, it was much faster, and he was caught off guard. This baleful aura was too terrifying. It was formed from the endless slaughter of a seventh-step Empyrean, and it had definitely drunk the blood of a sixth-step Empyrean. Even a peerless genius like Xian Chihu couldn't help but groan. The space between his eyebrows split open, and a stream of blood flowed out. Ling Han sighed. If he was a third-step Empyrean, then he would still be qualified to fight against Xian Chihu. Even if he wasn't a match for him, it wouldn't be difficult for him to escape. But a second-step Empyrean couldn't do it. If he went up to fight, he would definitely be instantly killed. He turned around and walked away. "Ling Han!" Xian Chihu's furious roar came from behind. He had already recovered, and was chasing after Ling Han. As expected of a fourth-step elite, his speed was too fast. Even if he was disturbed by the baleful aura of the broken saber, it only had an instant effect. "Tiger Xian, I'll spare your life this time. When I cultivate to the fourth step, how will I fight a tiger?" Ling Han laughed loudly, and the broken saber struck again. Xiao! Another saber strike was launched, and the saber ray became tens of thousands of meters long. Xian Qihu angrily punched. Pung! The saber chi instantly collapsed, but he groaned again, and a bloody mark appeared on his fist. As it turned out, this strike not only contained the power of the broken saber itself, but also contained a baleful aura. Thus, although Xian Qihu dissolved the saber chi with a punch, his hand was still injured by the saber chi. He was filled with hatred. Since he started cultivating, he had only been injured a few times, not to mention being injured by an ant whose cultivation level was lower than his. His gaze was cold, and his face was full of killing intent. Chapter 2886. This celestial king was called Yan Jiuling, and he had only broken through to the celestial king tier a billion years ago. However, celestial metal was hard to obtain, so he had only obtained 200 million years ago, and was able to refine his own celestial king tier treasure. Being able to become an immortal king, he had naturally seen a lot of things. However, when the magma of the volcano suddenly opened up and a person ran out, he was still so shocked that he couldn't control himself. One had to know that this was the mouth of a volcano that could refine immortal metal. How terrifying was the blazing temperature! Even a celestial king of the 7th or 8th celestial realm might be burned to ashes. Thus, in his shock, the celestial artifact in his hand instantly slipped and fell. It fell into the boiling lava. Ah, my immortal artifact! He cried out, his expression filled with regret. Unless he stepped into the 8th celestial layer, then he would be able to withstand such blazing heat. Otherwise, going down rashly would be equivalent to courting death. At this moment, he naturally hated the man in front of him to death. However, the other party could actually appear from the magma. What kind of terrifying strength was that? Therefore, he only stared at the man. He watched as the man used his hand as a knife to chop off the tentacle around his ankle, as if it was the most terrifying thing in the world. In fact, it was because it was a frenzied tentacle. Although Ling Han escaped from the void in time, the frenzied tentacles still wrapped around his ankle, and he was brought out with him. Fortunately, the void was closed in time, and the tentacles were cut off like a guillotine. Before he could heave a sigh of relief, an extremely evil thought rushed into his mind. Boom! At the same time, layers of images appeared in his mind, but they were not transmitted by this thought. Instead, they came from the depths of his memories. What? He still has that kind of memory? Ling Han was shocked. Could this be the awakening that Meng Dong had mentioned? How did it have anything to do with madness? One scene after another flashed past in Ling Han's mind. He saw a strange creature that was indescribably huge. Its whole body was covered with tentacles, and it was clinging onto a plane, as if it wanted to squeeze in with great effort, yet was unable to do so. With this comparison, it could be seen that it was about the size of a plane, or even slightly larger. It was too terrifying. What kind of creature could grow to such an extent? A name suddenly appeared in Ling Han's mind. Only frenzy remained. It transformed into a plane and devoured everything. Could this be the real scene of its confrontation with the Frostfire plane? Ling Han's soul was greatly shaken. He did not know why he would have such memories, and why he would be stimulated by the frenzied power. Frenzy was always able to discover him in the void, and attack him quickly. Could it be related to this? And Ling Han was suddenly startled. Although Frenzy had attacked him menacingly, and even attacked him, it was clear that he did not have any plans to kill him. It was as if it only wanted to stimulate the memory buried in his body. Ling Han felt like he was going crazy. What was the meaning of Frenzy? Did they attack him time and time again, just to make him see a certain scene? No, there was also an indescribable evil intent that seemed to want to awaken some kind of suppressed power in his body. Boom! The scene in his mind kept changing. The gigantic creature was in a standoff with another plane, and in that plane, there were countless experts resisting, preventing the invasion of the gigantic creature. These were all celestial venerables. Ling Han understood in his heart that this must be the battle between Frenzy and the experts of the Frostfire plane. The scene continued to flash. Frenzy was still unable to take down this plane. Hence its body shook, and hundreds of spots of light surged out from its body, shuttling through the void. At this moment the scene changed. It followed these spots of light. Some spots of light encountered a void storm and were quickly annihilated, but some spots of light passed through the void and appeared in other planes. The scene closely followed one of the spots of light and entered a plane. Instantly, a strong sense of familiarity rose up in Ling Han. Celestial territory. The spot of light did not stop. It passed through the celestial territory and entered the ancient realm. From the ancient realm, it entered a small world. Xiao. It entered the body of one of the people. This was a woman. She had a big belly, but her clothes were ragged. One could tell that she was extremely poor. Over a month later, she gave birth to a child. It was a boy, but she died because of a difficult birth. The boy was adopted, but soon wandered the streets, doing petty thievery. However, due to a coincidence, he entered a martial arts sect and walked on a different path in life. Later, this boy actually discovered that he possessed astonishing talent in alchemy. Thus he began to learn alchemy again. Ling Han's mouth involuntarily gaped wide, because this was his last life. Very soon, he realized that he had been bullied and humiliated by the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. He went everywhere to search for ancient sites, attempting to turn the tables. In the end, he was killed by the Black Tower, but his soul was preserved by the Black Tower. Until 10,000 years had passed, and he was sent into this body again, replacing it. In this process, that spot of light did not extinguish all along, but showed a subtle change. Pung, Ling Han's figure shook, and he suddenly woke up. The scenes in his mind all disappeared, and the power of the myriad planes inside his body activated at the same time, forcibly obliterating the evil intent that frenzy had struck in. Wang, his mind glowed, and a symbol appeared, instantly suppressing the other heavenly venerable symbols until they paled in comparison. This was actually a first-rate symbol. Ling Han was completely dumbfounded. For a moment, thousands of thoughts ran through his mind, and he felt his heart in a mess. There was too much information. He forced himself to calm down, and began to sort it out one by one. If the scenes he saw were real, and not deliberately fabricated by frenzy to deceive him, then he really was inextricably linked to frenzy. Based on the scenes he saw, he had a guess. More than an epoch ago, frenzy was unable to conquer the fiery frost plane and take down this hard bone. So it formulated a plan to shoot out a few hundred spots of light from its body. This was very likely similar to a life seed or inheritance. In short, some of these spots of light were annihilated in the void, and some went to various planes. And he was the one chosen by the spots of light. Logically speaking, he should have obtained some kind of inheritance, but for some reason, these spots of light were dormant. It was only just now, when frenzy came into direct contact with him, that these hidden scenes all reappeared, allowing him to see this past period of history. This should be an inheritance, because he had obtained a first-rate heavenly venerable symbol. Considering that Meng Dong had always said that he had not awakened, and even called him little brother, then the other should also be someone chosen by frenzy's spots of light. What was their purpose? Frenzy would not deliberately give them gifts. There was always only one goal, and that was to collapse the origin world, so that it could devour it. So the mission of these chosen people should be to destroy the fiery frost plane, weaken the power of the fiery frost plane, and make it possible to devour it. This inference should be very reasonable, but here came the problem. Ling Han was not stupid, so why should he help frenzy? Chapter 2887. Ling Han didn't think that he would risk his life for madness after she gave him a first-rate celestial venerable symbol. That would be too stupid. He wasn't that stupid, and madness shouldn't be that naive. Wait a minute. He suddenly remembered that an evil consciousness had entered his sea of consciousness, but before it could do anything, it was destroyed by the surging power of the plane in his body. Could it be that, normally speaking, this consciousness should have affected him, causing him to surrender and join Madness's camp? This was very likely to perfectly explain his conclusion just now. But the problem was, Madness would never do something it wasn't sure of. So how could he resist this consciousness? Madness's strength surpassed 7 steps. Was its consciousness so easy to destroy? Ling Han knew that he was very awesome, He had cultivated the power of 10,000 planes, and was equivalent to a small origin world in itself, but it was small, after all. He had not even been able to defeat Xi and Chihu, so how could he be strong enough to obliterate the frenzied consciousness? The more truth he knew, the more confused Ling Han became. He solved some mysteries, such as why Meng Dong was so sure that he was on the same side, and why he kept calling him his little brother. In a sense, they were indeed on the same side. Why was Madness always able to find him easily in the void? It was because the light spot in his body was like a bright lamp in the darkness. It was too obvious to Madness, as it was a part of it. Annoying, too annoying. Ling Han opened his eyes, so annoyed that he wanted to beat someone up. So he went to Yin Jiuling, who was standing in front of him. "Greetings, my lord." Yin Jiuling's heart skipped a beat, and he hurriedly cupped his fists and bowed. Although he was complaining in his heart because Ling Han had scared him, and even the immortal artifact that was about to be forged was gone. But Ling Han's strength was clearly above his. Not to mention anything else, just the power he emitted when he opened his eyes almost made him pee in his pants. One had to know that he was an immortal king, already standing at a level equivalent to the rules, but he was still scared to this extent. It showed how terrifying Ling Han was. Ling Han merely glanced at him, and immediately grasped the entire sequence of events. He had merely not paid attention just now, but that did not mean that he did not know. It was just that it had been hidden in his memories, and now that he had dug it out, he would understand. He nodded. With a flip of his hand, a piece of immortal gold appeared. He kneaded it casually, and the immortal gold quickly turned into the shape of a sword. He then threw it towards Yin Jiuling. "I'll compensate you with a sword." Yin Jiuling took the sword numbly. His mouth was so wide open that it almost reached his ears. This was immortal gold, the toughest thing in the world. It was true that a ninth firmament immortal monarch could break immortal metal, but it was impossible for them to do it as easily as Ling Han, who could knead it like mud. This kind of power surpassed the immortal king level. He knelt down and said respectfully, "Junior Yin Jiuling greets Senior." Ling Han waved his hand. "Go. It's very dangerous here. If you stay here any longer, I'm afraid your life will be in danger." "Yes." Yin Jiuling hurriedly took the immortal sword and left. This shape had already been forged. Next, he only needed to use his own martial art will to nourish it, and it would become a celestial artifact. Ling Han stood still. He wasn't trying to scare Yin Jiuling, but if a battle broke out later, a mere first firmament celestial king wouldn't even be cannon fodder. After a while, the void split open, and a person walked out. "Meng Dong, little brother, now you know who you are, right?" he said with a smile. Ling Han didn't move. He wasn't surprised by Meng Dong's appearance. The other was a person in a frenzy, and he had awakened his memories. It was naturally reasonable for the other to come and recruit him. He raised his hand. Wang, a symbol shone, causing the world to lose color. Immediately, countless bolts of lightning struck towards him. This was the celestial sovereign symbol he had just obtained, a first-rate one. It was very strange. He didn't need to comprehend this symbol. The moment it appeared, he grasped it. It was as if he had learned it long ago, but he had forgotten it somewhere. When Meng Dong saw this, he instantly laughed loudly. "Little brother, you finally returned." Ling Han smiled faintly. "There are some problems with my body. Some of my memories aren't too clear." Meng Dong nodded. "You are indeed different from others. As long as we step into the celestial sovereign realm, we will automatically awaken, but you haven't awakened at the second step. It was this lord who used his power to forcefully activate your dormant memories." As expected, although Ling Han had long since guessed it, when he heard Meng Dong say it himself, his heart still shook. However, his expression didn't change at all. He still had this bit of control. This lord come, Meng Dong was completely on Frenzy's side. He purposely revealed a distressed expression. "My mind is a mess right now, full of confusion. Little brother, you have to know that we are all a part of this lord, and in the future, we will all return to this lord and become the ruler of the entire origin world." Meng Dong's face revealed a fanatical expression. "Little brother, if you didn't have this lord's power in your body, how could you possibly be so freakish and become such a powerful celestial sovereign?" If it wasn't this Lord, how could you possibly possess the ability to devour life essence for your own cultivation? Everything we have was bestowed by this Lord, so you must be firm in your belief, and not let your imagination run wild. Ling Han's heart moved. Back then, he could be chosen by the Black Tower. Was it also because he had the power of frenzy in his body? A sliver of confusion flashed through his mind. Could it be that he could reach this step today because of frenzy? His efforts were all in vain. No, Ling Han immediately said in his heart. No matter whether it was the power of frenzy or the Black Tower, it was certainly possible that they played a role in his path of growth. But the one who truly decided his fate was still himself. He said, "What should we do now?" "Cultivate diligently. When we reach the 6th step, we can begin to act." Meng Dong revealed a strong killing intent. Ling Han's heart trembled. If others said that they wanted to reach the 6th step, it might only be an extravagant hope. But Meng Dong and the others all had a sliver of frenzy's power in their bodies. So advancing to the 6th step definitely wasn't difficult. One had to know that frenzy could create things out of nothing, and the 6th step could also form an army, so it wasn't impossible to help Meng Dong and the others reach the 6th step. At that time, Lin Luo and the others at the 7th step would be restrained by the main body of frenzy, and behind them, a few hundred at the 6th step would unleash their might at the same time. Then, how would the fiery frost plane block it? When all the living beings in the fiery frost plane died, the power of heaven and earth would decline to the extreme, and frenzy would have the qualifications to directly devour the fiery frost plane. There would be no need to care about those at the 7th step. Moreover, now that the extraterrestrial battlefield was equivalent to being sealed, there was no external threat, only internal strife. How many celestial sovereigns had died in the previous period? When Meng Dong and the others rose in revolt, how many 6th steps would there be in the fiery frost plane? The more Ling Han thought about it, the more apprehensive he became. Could all of this be a scheme of frenzy? Sealing the extraterrestrial battlefield caused the world to show signs of peace, causing the celestial sovereigns to begin internal strife, and its hidden power was continuously growing strong and strong. When the time came to suddenly rise in revolt, it could instantly destroy the fiery frost plane. Hee, when can I meet the other brothers and sisters? Ling Han asked. If he could grasp all of these people's identities, then he could ask Zhou Heng, Chu Hao, and the others to act, and they could quell this disaster ahead of time. Meng Dong laughed loudly. Little brother, don't be anxious. When the time comes, I'll naturally let you meet everyone. Fuck, this guy was quite vigilant, still unwilling to be at ease. Ling Han didn't say anything more. Haste makes waste. He couldn't beat the grass and startle the snake. Chapter 2888. Meng Dong talked to Ling Han for a while, mainly to calm Ling Han's emotions. After all, he had suddenly fallen into frenzy's side. How could he adapt to it so quickly? After talking for a while, he said, "Little brother, contact me again in the future. I'm looking forward to joining hands with you." A thought flashed through Ling Han's mind. Should he take down Meng Dong now and force him to reveal his secret? But after thinking about it, he dispelled this idea. Who knew if frenzy had any backup plans? If Meng Dong's sea of consciousness exploded under the interrogation, then he would lose an important clue. Ling Han nodded. Okay, I'll contact you again later. He paused for a moment and suddenly thought of something. He hurriedly asked, "That lost plane, did I deliberately guide us to it?" Meng Dong revealed a puzzled look. "I'm not sure about this. Logically speaking, it shouldn't be. Although a fight like this will indeed cause many celestial venerables to kill each other, there are too many resources there. It's enough to improve the overall strength of the remaining celestial venerables. When I contact the celestial venerables, I'll naturally ask. I'm leaving." He tore open the void and naturally went to that lost dimension. There were too many precious things there. Even 6th-step celestial venerables regarded it as a treasure land. Ling Han pondered. In the unseen world, there seemed to be several forces competing. Frenzy undoubtedly had the initiative. Its main body was suppressing the frosty flame dimension, but it had endless backup plans. If everything went according to its plan, there would really be a day when it devoured the origin world. However, The appearance of a lost ancient dimension contained great medicine and celestial venerables symbols that shouldn't exist. This caused the level of celestial venerables to constantly increase. It was very likely that a new 7-step celestial venerables would emerge in a short period of time. This was definitely not what Frenzy wanted. Back then, how did that lost ancient dimension collapse? Furthermore, it was a dimension within a dimension. In theory, it was impossible. What power surpassed 7-step celestial venerables to do all this? Ling Han stood for a long time. The amount of information he received today was a little too much, and he needed to take a good rest. 10 days later, he tore open the void and went on his way again. He firmly believed that no matter what Frenzy had done to him, he was himself and didn't live for anyone. In his heart, family and friends were more important than anything else. He would definitely protect the Yuan world and not let madness succeed. Shuttling through the void, he didn't have to worry about madness finding him this time. Firstly, madness thought that he had awakened, and there was no reason for it to find him again. Secondly, he had already erased the imprint that madness had left behind and lost the lighthouse. The void was so big, how could he find it? Half a year later, he finally reached the lost world. He landed and squeezed into the plane. This was the outermost plane. Ling Han didn't stop. He passed through the strata and headed toward the plane below. After entering the second plane, he returned to the base and found Zhou Heng and the other two. He told them everything about himself and madness. He didn't hide anything because he had a clear conscience. This shocked Zhou Heng and the others. They didn't expect Frenzy to play such a trick. Ling Han, this is a serious matter. Let me personally search your soul, said Zhou Heng. It wasn't that he didn't believe in Ling Han, but madness's methods were too shocking. Who knew if it had set up some backdoor in Ling Han's sea of consciousness, so that it could explode in the future and control Ling Han? Ling Han nodded. He also wanted to know if it had completely eliminated any future troubles. Zhou Heng pressed his hand on Ling Han's forehead and probed it with his divine sense, searching carefully. After a while he withdrew his hand. How is it? Lin Xiaoyang and Chu Hao asked. Zhou Heng's expression was a little strange. This kid's body has endless plane power, like a huge millstone. My soul couldn't penetrate at all before it was ground and destroyed. Walking down this path, is it really so mystical? Lin Xiaoyang said in surprise. Seeing Ling Han reveal a puzzled expression, he said, Actually, my father also once had this idea of condensing the power of the plane of the entire origin world. However, this is an impossible thing. Pseudo-celestial venerables do not have such a powerful capacity. The extreme is about the power of 1,000 planes, but this is dead power. Once it grows to the extreme, it can't be pushed any further. So my father and the others came up with another method, which is to implant a small plane in one's body before advancing to celestial venerables. As long as one grows, this plane can also grow. In the early stages, it's not as good as a celestial venerables that can accommodate hundreds of plane power. But it has endless growth potential. From about the 6th step onwards, the latter method is stronger. For example, Yu Lian, Xi and Qihu, and the others. No wonder it only took them a few 100 million years to advance to the 4th step. They didn't need to collect unique power from each plane, so of course it was fast. But you've really walked a completely different path, which is equivalent to combining the previous two methods. If you cultivate this to the extreme, hiss. Zhou Heng and the other two gasped at the same time. How strong would that be? According to my estimation, Ling Han's development potential is limitless. Maybe he can jump 7 steps and stand at the same height as insanity, or maybe even surpass it, Chu Hao said. Lin Xiaoyang also nodded. So Ling Han can't be controlled by insanity. It will never allow someone who can threaten its existence to grow. Zhou Heng looked at Ling Han and said, Some astonishing transformation must have happened to your body, causing the control of the frenzy to lose its effect. This also allowed you to contain the power of the entire origin world, turning you into another origin world with endless potential. The three of them were sure that Ling Han's situation was too special. It was not something insanity could control. The problem now is to find Meng Dong and the others and eliminate them in advance. Otherwise, When they reach the sixth step, it will be difficult to deal with them. Lin Xiaoyang said solemnly. However, we only know of Meng Dong and Wuxia. If we act rashly, it is very likely that we will alert the enemy and let the others hide their identities completely. They won't make trouble until they reach the sixth step. So this matter still falls on Ling Han. Find out the remaining remnants of insanity. Then we will announce it to the world. We will attack together and eliminate these remnants. Ling Han nodded. I will do my best. He left. He first upgraded the devoured metal in his hands to the highest level, and then refined it into a revered treasure weapon that was completely defense-oriented. Even the devoured metal had its limitations. The amount of martial art willpower that could be imprinted was limited. So, it was good at attack and not good at defense. After all, it was just a weapon. A revered treasure weapon that was completely defense-oriented, and added with the devoured metal's own toughness, its defensive ability was top-notch. Ling Han returned to the first level and moved everyone in the Celestial Visitor in over. This would be the new Celestial Visitor in from now on. Then he called the Empress and Hunyeo and continued to explore the mines. He had to reach the third step as soon as possible. Otherwise, he really did not have any sense of security in this chaotic world. Any random Xian Chihu would make him have no choice but to flee in a sorry state. If Xian Chihu knew about this, he would definitely be furious. He was the greatest prodigy of all eternity, not some random cat or dog. After so many years, the mines of this level had actually been more or less explored. So Ling Han went to explore the Earth's core. Maybe there was another level below. Chapter 2890. Ling Han discovered that he was really busy. He had come here a few times already. He shook his head and began to travel underground. He first came to the second layer and then headed underground. Because the Empress had the power of the plane he had left on her, she could act as his guiding light. The Empress's location was clearly still underground. Could there really be a third plane below? Though Ling Han had long since guessed this, when this scene really happened, he was still a bit incredulous. Overlapping two planes required several hundred seventh-step elites. So what kind of power would be needed for three? Ling Han didn't dare to imagine. At least, all the elites added together couldn't do it, and probably not even madness. Otherwise, it could overlap planes, so how could it not take down the fiery frost plane? His figure sped up, and he continued to dive down. The power of a heavenly venerable surged, and any obstacle in front of him was as vulnerable as paper. Just like this, he traveled for about a dozen days. He broke through the last layer, and his figure appeared in a new world. The mountain towered several tens of thousands of meters high, and the crater was several tens of thousands of meters deep. This was obviously a sea in the past, but now the seawater had evaporated, leaving only a massive crater. True enough, there was a third plane here. Ling Han sensed that this should also have been a high-level plane in the past, but now it was dead, and he could only distinguish the strength of the 6 essential powers. Of course, Ling Han could only sense one power now. He slightly identified the direction, and once again moved, suddenly whistling out. After another few days, an unbroken chain of mountains appeared in front of him, and the Empress was among them. His figure landed, and soon found the Empress and Hunyeo. Ling Han. Hunyeo jumped over first and hugged him. You're too bad. Neo's head is about to split open, but you don't care at all. Neo is going to die of sadness. This little girl. Ling Han didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He hugged the little girl and said, All right, aren't I back? Then Neo wants you to kiss me 100 times, no, 1,000 times. Hunyeo bargained, her large eyes blinking. Ling Han felt slightly awkward. There was not only the Empress and Hunyeo here, but there was also Zhang San, Li Si, Zhao Wu, and a large group of people. Kissing a few times was fine, but kissing 100 or 1,000 times was a little awkward. We'll kiss when we get home, he said to Hunyeo. Only then did Hunyeo nod, beaming from ear to ear. Sometimes she was quite easy to coax. What is it? He asked the queen. A huge mine was discovered here. After all these years of mining, there isn't much left. However, the essence of the mine should still be here. So no one can mine it now. Everyone is staring at it, Ready to fight it out, Queen said. Ling Han nodded and asked, "Who are the experts?" "There are quite a few at the 4th step, and there are even a few at the 5th step," the Empress said solemnly. Ling Han also frowned. He could handle 4 steps. But if it was 5 steps, he wouldn't be able to handle it even if he used the 9-stream combination talisman. Unless the Empress suddenly flipped her hand and took out a few great herbs. "These years, we've also prescribed a considerable number of great herbs and left some for you. Ling Han, after you eat them, will you be able to reach the 3rd step?" Hunyao also asked. Ling Han was at the peak stage of the 2nd step in the first place, and had also strengthened his foundation previously. When he was being hunted by Xi and Chihu, he further polished his power to an incredibly pure level. He only had to push his cultivation forward a little bit, and he would be able to break through. Perhaps, it was only a matter of lacking a few great herbs. Ling Han nodded. "I'll try." If he advanced to the 3rd step, then he would have the strength to battle even those at the 5th step. Of course, whether he could suppress them or not was another matter. After all, having battle prowess at the 5th step and crushing those at the 5th step were 2 completely different concepts. Fairies, this is... Just as Ling Han was about to enter the new celestial visitor inn, he saw a man with an imposing appearance walk over with large strides. There was a warm smile on his face, but it couldn't hide the pride in the depths of his eyes. Ling Han said to the Empress, "Troublesome. Go ahead and cultivate in seclusion. I'll take care of it," the Empress said calmly, appearing unconcerned. Ling Han nodded, and with a flash, he had already entered the celestial visitor inn. "Wayaya, why don't you ask Niao? Niao can also take care of it." Hunyao jumped around, appearing extremely displeased. Only then did the Empress walk towards the man. "It's none of your business." The man's smile didn't diminish, and he revealed an expression of concern. "I'm just worried that the 2 fairies would be deceived." "Fei Baizhu, you're so annoying." Hunyao made a face at him. "Fairy who? My name is Fei Baizhu," the man corrected Hunyao. But there was a smile on his face. If Hunyao was only beautiful, then he was a grand 4th step cultivator, and wouldn't take it to heart at all. However, Hunyao's beauty was pure and natural, without the slightest bit of pretense. This was incredibly rare. What celestial venerable would make a face? Only she was fresh and refined, and aside from being beautiful, the Empress was also proud to the core. That was also natural, and he liked it. "Fei Baizhu is easier to remember," Hunyao murmured, then put her hands on her hips. Didn't I tell you to get lost? Why are you still standing here? Do you want to steal Niao's meat?" Her face was full of suspicion and wariness, and Fei Baizhu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He was a grand 4th step cultivator. Did he have to steal food from others? "Don't worry, Fairy Hu, I won't steal," he explained. "You won't steal, but you still want to eat in your heart, right?" Hunyao's ability to think was completely out of the ordinary. She couldn't help but turn her body sideways to protect the food in her hands, as if a piece would be missing if someone looked at it. The Empress was impatient. "Fei Baizhu, you're not welcome here. I've already said it many times." Fei Baizhu's gaze turned cold. At first he didn't mind taking things slowly. After all, Hunyao and the Empress were one in the 4th step, and the other in the 3rd step. Being able to cultivate to such heights, and being as beautiful as a fairy, each with their own characteristics, naturally made his heart pound. Spending some time to pursue them was worth it. Only this kind of cultivation companion was worthy of accompanying him for a long life. Otherwise he would grow tired of her sooner or later. But Ling Han's appearance made him feel a strong sense of danger. If he continued to pursue slowly, then it might be all for naught. "All right then, please be careful, fairies. After all, the people here are complicated. If you encounter any danger, you can come to my camp, and I will definitely do my best to help." He didn't continue to pester them, and instead revealed a warm smile. He turned around and left. "What do you think he means by this?" Hunyao asked the Empress. "Who cares what tricks he has up his sleeves?" The Empress didn't care, and sat down cross-legged, closing her eyes to rest. "Cocky guy," Hunyao muttered, and also sat down. Chapter 2891. There were many people in the mountains, but no one spoke, and the atmosphere was quite oppressive. This was because it was very likely that a great battle would break out, and then there would be a great shuffle. Many people would be eliminated, not qualified to touch the final mine. As expected, a few days later the purge began. Elites led the teams, and the scattered soldiers were all expelled. After these small fries were swept away, the remaining great forces would naturally fight to decide who the final and most precious mine would belong to. The Empress and Hunyo's side was relatively quiet, but after half a month, there were still people coming. Fairies, are you willing to join our Xianwu Union? A total of 4 people walked over. Among them, 2 were at the 4th step, and the other 2 were at the 3rd step. This was a very powerful force. Not interested. The Empress didn't even open her eyes, and coldly refused. Then there's no other way. We can only ask you 2 to leave, a 4th step said calmly. Does your family own this place? What right do you have to chase us away? Hunyo immediately jumped up. If you want to stay, you can, but you have to be strong enough, the 4th step said. Don't talk nonsense with them, just chase them away, the other 4th step said. All right. The first 4th step nodded. He had a head full of white hair, but his face was as young as a 17 or 18-year-old youth, very strange. He and the other red-robed 4th step moved at the same time, attacking Hunyo, while the other 2 3rd steps joined forces to attack the Empress. 2 4th steps against 1 4th step, 2 3rd steps against 1 3rd step, all 2 against 1. Obviously, it had been arranged beforehand, and 2 against 1 was enough. Ha ha ha, Nyo loves fighting the most. Hunyo laughed loudly, her figure extremely agile, and immediately charged towards the 2 4th steps. The Empress was still sitting cross-legged, and when the 2 3rd steps arrived, she softly rebuked and pressed out with one hand. Wang! A terrifying power surged, and a jade palm as large as the sky appeared, suppressing towards the 2 3rd steps. Reality had proven that people like her, who had gathered the power of the plane to make a breakthrough, would have a huge advantage in the early stages. However, because the power of the plane had a limit, this advantage would continuously diminish as one's cultivation level increased. But even so, she was still far stronger than people of the same cultivation level. Even if she could reach the 7th step one day, she would still be able to maintain a considerable advantage. The current Empress's cultivation level was at the early stage of the 3rd step, but her battle prowess had soared to the peak stage of the 3rd step. Hong, this palm of hers was too terrifying, enough to crush 99% of 3rd step. Not good. The 2 3rd step cultivators exclaimed in shock. They were both in the late stage of the 3rd step, and originally had an advantage in cultivation level. Moreover, it was 2 against 1, so they should have a firm chance of victory. However, they had never imagined that the Empress would actually be so freakish, causing them to be completely unable to react in time. Wang Wang. Symbols lit up on their bodies, and they activated their heavenly venerate tier symbols at the same time. Pung pung. They each unleashed a strike that shot towards the Empress. A shockwave spread out. The 2 3rd step elites had joined forces, and with the help of the heavenly venerate symbol, they had finally withstood the Empress's attack. Their expressions involuntarily changed. Although they had blocked this strike, the Empress had only done so casually, and had not used her full power at all. If she had also channeled her heavenly venerable tier symbol, how could they have blocked this strike? Not good. An unexpected change has occurred in the plan. The Empress opened her beautiful eyes, her gaze filled with killing intent. She had actually failed to kill the enemy with a single palm strike? Her Tsundra attribute had already been activated. With a humph, her figure flashed, and she charged towards the 2 3rd step elites. Her heavenly venerable tier symbol activated, giving her a frightening boost of power. Her divine might was incredibly frightening. The 2 3rd step elites did not dare to face her head-on, and hurriedly retreated. If they tried to face her head-on, they would probably be seeking death. Lord Crimson Emperor. They called out to the red-robed 4th step for help. Interesting. The red-robed 4th step humphed lightly, and turned around to deliver a palm strike towards the Empress. Hong, the 4th step unleashed his might, which was incredibly frightening. Peng the Empress was forcibly stopped in her tracks. One had battle prowess at the peak stage of the 3rd step, while the other was in the middle stage of the 4th step. This gap was too wide. Ha 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 ha, damn shameless. Do you want Nyo to help you? Hunyo clapped her hands and laughed. She had never been used to the Empress, so how could she possibly take the initiative to help? The Empress did not say a word, and avoided the red-robed 4th step, focusing on the 2 3rd step elites. Crimson Emperor, you go and take down that 3rd step. Leave this to me, the white-haired 4th step said. Fine. The red-robed 4th step nodded. If he attacked casually like this, even if he could take down a peak stage of the 3rd step, he would have to spend some effort. Shameless, Hunyo exclaimed lightly, and moved to block the red-robed 4th step. Little girl, you'd better take care of yourself first, the white-haired 4th step said with a smile, and pressed down with a palm strike, forcing Hunyo to retreat and defend. Because he was also in the middle stage of the 4th step, he was much stronger than Hunyo. Nyo is angry, Hunyo shouted, and suddenly activated a heavenly venerable mark, instantly causing her battle prowess to soar. This was the heavenly venerable mark that she obtained from opening the stone, and it increased her strength by more than 20 times. In this way, her might instantly increased greatly, and she broke through the blockade of the white-haired 4th step, joining forces with the Empress. White hair, you can't even stop an early stage of the 4th step? The red-robed 4th step said mockingly, as he approached the white-haired 4th step. The white-haired 4th step humphed, and similarly activated a heavenly venerable mark, immediately increasing his battle prowess. He had the advantage in cultivation level, but his heavenly venerable mark was inferior to Hunyo's, so their battle prowess was almost the same. However, everyone knew that the heavenly venerable mark could only be used for 2 hours, and at that time, Hunyo's battle prowess would rapidly drop, and she would no longer be his match. However, for now, Hunyo was enough to restrain the 2 4th step cultivators, freeing the Empress to suppress the 2 3rd step cultivators. The 2 3rd step cultivators could only keep dodging, and the 2 4th step cultivators would occasionally attack to help them out of their predicament. They were all extremely ashamed and resentful. They were obviously here to suppress the 3-step cultivators, but now they became a burden. Fortunately, the time that Hunyo could show her might was limited. As long as she could drag it out for 2 hours, she would have no strength left. 2 hours passed quickly, and just as the red-robed and white-haired 4th step prepared to counterattack with all their strength, Hunyo activated the 2nd symbol, and her battle prowess was almost undiminished. What? This greatly shocked the red-robed and white-haired 4th step. How could Hunyo still use a high-level heavenly venerable mark? Although it was only a 7th-rate one, because heavenly venerable marks were too rare, 8th-rate ones could be considered high-grade, and 7th-rate ones were definitely high-grade. One had to know that when these ancient planes had not been discovered, there were only a few heavenly venerable marks in the world. It was only now that there were a few more heavenly venerable marks, but they were basically only 9th-rate ones. Yet, Hunyo consecutively used 2 7th-rate symbols, so how could they not be shocked and envious? If it were not for a certain someone's warning, they really wanted to kill Hunyo and refine these 2 7th-rate symbols. Great, they could last for another 2 hours. Chapter 2892. However, 2 hours later, Hunyo used the 3rd 7th-rate symbol. In these years, how many ores did Ling Han and the others open? Although only a very small portion were heavenly venerable symbols, and most of them went to Ling Han, the Empress and Hunyo still received a few. How could this be? On a faraway mountain peak, Fei Bai frowned. In his plan, Hunyo and the Empress would soon be defeated, and he would appear in time to save the 2 girls. Although the hero saving the beauty was an old trick, it was always tried and true. But now, although the beauties were in danger, they looked like they could deal with it themselves. So how could he save them? Whatever, he'd act according to plan. With a leap, he appeared at the edge of the battle. Crimson Emperor, White Demon, please give me some face and stop, he said. The red-robed and white-haired duo stopped. But the Empress and Hunyo didn't stop. One continued to charge at the 2 3-step warriors, while the other focused on the red-robed and white-haired duo, attacking madly. In this way, the two three-step warriors were forced to continue fleeing, and the red-robed and white-haired duo had to face Hunyeo, or else they would be raising their necks to die. Fei Bai's expression was unsightly. He actually couldn't persuade them. Where was his face? Fairies, this is all a misunderstanding, he said. Crimson Emperor and White Demon are both capable generals of my alliance. They are here on my father's orders to clean up the miscellaneous people. As long as you two join our alliance, you naturally won't be subject to this restriction. Hunyeo giggled. Fei Baizhu, you purposely ordered these people to make trouble for us, and then you took the opportunity to save the beauty, making us look at you in a different light and feel grateful to you. Isn't it a pity that you didn't think that we were stronger than you imagined? Seeing Fei Baizhu's expression change slightly, she continued. This trick is too old-fashioned, and was seen through by the wise and divine Niu long ago. Fei Baizhu couldn't help but clench his fists, revealing a hint of emotion in his heart. Young Master Fei, these two girls have at least 7th-rate Empyrean symbols on them. It is highly possible that they are even more important than the mine here. This senior advises you to give up on those thoughts, and capture them to refine the Empyrean symbols out of them, the white-haired four-step said coldly. Although he addressed Fei Baizhu as young Master Fei, there was no respect in his tone. Both of them were at the 4th step, and his cultivation was slightly higher. Naturally, he addressed Fei Baizhu as young Master Fei out of respect for his father. That was a 5th-step expert. Even 104th-step experts might not be able to defeat him. That's right. What we pursue is the boundless heavenly Tao. How can we be misled by women? The red-robed 4th step said. Fei Bai's expression was unsightly. He did not want to give up on the Empress and Hunyeo, because in his opinion, the path of cultivation was long and arduous, and if he had such exquisite beauties to accompany him, he would naturally not be bored and impatient. However, after hearing what the two men said, would the two women still follow him? He was also a decisive person, so he immediately nodded. All right, he joined the battle. The 3 4-step experts exerted their strength together, and Hunyeo instantly appeared to be in a difficult position. Although Fei Baizhu was also only in the early stage of the 4th step, he had channeled a 7th-rate symbol, so his strength was not weaker than Hunyeo's. 3 against 1. Hunyeo felt a huge pressure. Wah, shameless, 3 against 1. Hunyeo shouted loudly, but gritted her teeth and refused to retreat. It was easy for her to retreat, but what about the Empress? Although the two women fought back and forth, they were both members of the old Ling family, so how could they possibly watch the other fall into the hands of the enemy? Retreat, the Empress said. She moved closer to Hunyeo. Hehe, if we let you guys escape, then we don't need to mingle around anymore, the red-robed 4th step said. He forcefully suppressed them. Another 2 hours passed, and Hunyeo still did not have a 4th 7th-rate symbol to channel, so her battle prowess dropped rapidly. Damn shameless, what else do you have? Hunyeo called out to the Empress. The Empress shrugged, indicating that there was nothing she could do. Then we can only call Ling Han out. Hunyeo called out loudly. Ling Han, come and save us. You still want to call for help? The white-haired 4th step sneered. At this time, no one can save you guys. Oh, why are you so sure? Xiao, a figure flashed, and Ling Han had already appeared. Ling Han, Hunyeo called out happily. Regardless of the situation, she instantly jumped onto Ling Han's body and hugged him like a bear. Although Fei Baizhu had already given up on the two women, seeing Hunyeo and Ling Han being so close, his expression could not help but change. He snorted coldly and said, a mere 2nd step. His tone was filled with disdain. The white-haired and red-robed men also laughed loudly. They really did not know what to do. They had thought that some super elite would appear, but it was actually just a 2nd-step cultivator. What could a 2nd-step cultivator do? Ling Han glared at Fei Baizhu. You also dare to have ideas about my wife? Who are you? Fei Baizhu had not finished speaking when Ling Han had already charged over, throwing out a punch. This punch was so fast. Although Fei Baizhu was slightly surprised, he did not care. No matter how fast it was just a 2nd step. He swatted a palm at Ling Han. At this time, He had already activated a heavenly venerable symbol, and his battle prowess was at its peak, reaching the middle stage of the fourth step. Pung! The punch shot out, and Fei Baiju's whole body trembled as a mist of blood sprayed out from his mouth. Young Master Fei, the white-haired and red-robed men were both shocked. Why did Fei Baiju not only fail to kill Ling Han with a single palm strike, but was instead injured? However, Fei Baiju did not answer them, and only stood there. The two were greatly shocked. What had happened? Ling Han, however, did not pay any more attention to Fei Baiju, and strode towards the red-robed and white-haired men. A symbol on his body shone, and although there was only one, it emitted a domineering aura that could suppress all Tao. Because this was a first-rate heavenly venerable symbol. What heavenly venerable symbol is this? It's too terrifying, as if it surpasses everything. The red-robed and white-haired men both cried out in shock, and they even forgot to care about Fei Baiju's current situation. Ling Han let out a long howl and punched out. Boundless energy surged, and the nearby mountain peaks collapsed one by one. The heavens trembled violently, and patches of land collapsed. Only now did red robe and white hair feel a great shock. Previously, they were only shocked that Ling Han was able to stand against Fei Bai and the others. But now that they were personally facing Ling Han, they finally understood what kind of pressure this was. They hurriedly activated their strongest battle prowess and charged towards Ling Han. Bang! However, with just a single strike, they felt as if they had suffered a terrifying blow, and all the blood vessels and bones in their bodies instantly snapped. They were overwhelmed with shock. A second-step cultivator had only needed one punch to heavily injure them, and they had completely lost the ability to continue fighting. Was he still human? Ling Han was astonished. They actually didn't die. In his opinion, these two people should have died with a single punch. Bang! In response, Fei Baiju's body suddenly exploded, turning into a boundless rain of blood. He had been killed by Ling Han with a single blow, and it was only now that he exploded. Chapter 2893. Ling Han's progress was slow, but that depended on who he was compared to. To be able to break through to the third step in a billion years, how many people could do this? In terms of talent in martial art, Ling Han admitted that he wasn't the strongest, but his opportunities and good fortune surpassed anyone else. For example, could there be a second person who could accommodate the entire origin world's plain power into his body? Being talented only made progress faster. But even Lin Yulian and the other prodigies were still stuck at the fourth step. Moreover, even if they crossed over now, the sixth and seventh steps would be a huge hurdle, and the time needed would be even longer. Moreover, the seventh step was the limit. As long as Ling Han could also take 7 steps, who could match him? Perhaps he would be invincible when he was at the 6th step. After breaking through to the 3rd step, the heavenly tribulation naturally descended, but Ling Han didn't care about it at all. This little setback couldn't even be considered a massage for him. He guided Hung Zi to continuously temper his body, stabilizing his cultivation at the 3rd step. Otherwise, it would be impossible for his battle strength to increase after just breaking through. He took out the remaining great medicine and swallowed it in a few mouthfuls. He had just broken through, and he needed great medicine to build his foundation. Even with the help of great medicine, Ling Han still spent another 100 million years to completely stabilize his cultivation at the 3rd step. There was no helping it. There was too much plain power in his body. And one great medicine was like a cup of water on a burning cart of firewood. And at the same time that he took the 3rd step, a celestial venerable symbol appeared in his body. It was still incomplete, but its power had increased by more than 40 times. If it was complete, how many times more power would it be? At the same time that he stabilized his realm, Ling Han was also repairing this symbol. The billions of plain power in his body surged, and it actually had a miraculous effect, nourishing this symbol, making it more complete. Plain power could have such an effect. Ling Han didn't understand at first, and then it dawned on him. He was equivalent to the origin world, so why couldn't he nourish the celestial venerable symbol? The complete 3-step talisman was a 4th-rate symbol, and it increased his power by 64 times. What level has my battle strength reached now? Ling Han muttered to himself. Can I break through 5 steps? If he could, then he would really be too terrifying. 5 steps against 4 steps was a complete suppression. The gap between this one step was really too big. However, Ling Han was only at the early stage of step 3. If he could have the battle prowess of step 5, that would really be amazing. Take the Empress for example. The higher her cultivation level, the weaker her battle prowess, surpassing her cultivation level. For example, she was currently in the early stage of the 3rd step, but her battle prowess was only at the peak stage of the 3rd step. She hadn't even broken through to the 4th step. Ling Han, on the other hand, was different. The power of the plane in his body was alive, and its growth rate was terrifying. I really want to find someone to practice with. Ling Han stood up, took a step, and chased after the Empress and Hunyeo. He had left his planar energy on the 2 women. As long as he sensed them, he would be able to find them no matter how far away they were. To his surprise, the 2 women were no longer on this floor, but had gone down again. He didn't stay here for long, and also followed them, heading underground. When he went deep underground, he immediately discovered that the essential particles here were even more concentrated. Under the pressure of these layers of planes, there seemed to be a huge pressure that caused the essential particles to become incredibly dense. In here, the collision of the essential particles was undoubtedly even more intense. Terrifying flames filled the air, and to say nothing of a 9th heaven celestial king, even a 1st step heavenly venerable wouldn't dare to barge in. Otherwise, they would be easily burned to ashes. If there were a few more layers of planes stacked on top of each other, would anyone still be able to go in? As he thought this, he easily charged through. With his present battle prowess that was very likely to be at the 5th step, this was naturally a piece of cake. Very soon, he charged out of the underground layer, and indeed entered into the 4th plane. He followed the traces of the 2 women, and a few days later he landed. The Empress and Hunyeo were with a great many people. It was unknown what they were talking about, but the atmosphere seemed to be very tense. Ling Han immediately said, "Are we going to fight?" "That's great." The Empress couldn't help but be speechless. Why did this guy only think about fighting all day? Hunyeo said, "No, we were just discussing whether to enter an underground cave, not to fight." Ling Han couldn't help but be disappointed. There's no fight. He still wanted to fight with the 5th step and test his battle prowess. However, even if there was going to be a conflict here, there wouldn't be a 5th step, but always a 4th step. With Ling Han present, the Empress and Hunyeo naturally became more courageous. They strongly advocated entering the underground cave to explore. Some people chose to back off, while others chose to enter. In the end, they discovered an astonishingly valuable origin stone mine in the cave, and those who entered all earned a lot. Ling Han had the special ability to see stones, so the 3 of them naturally earned the most. There were close to 30 great medicines, and there were also 7 heavenly venerable symbols, which made the 3 of them very happy. They left to search for a new mine. It was really interesting. In the past, when Ling Han was still in the 2nd step and didn't want to touch the 5th step, he would always encounter such elites, or at least encounter the descendants of the 5th step, making the 2 sides become enemies. But now, he wasn't afraid of the 5th step, and even wanted to find one to fight. But the 5th step elites seemed to have all suddenly disappeared. Not only them, but even their descendants seemed to have all disappeared. This made Ling Han very depressed, and even his spirit was low. After several years, they found a new mine, and just as they were mining, a group of people appeared. "This place belongs to us now. If you don't want to die, get lost." There were a total of 12 people in this group, and all of them were heavenly venerables. Now that they could appear here, they were at least in the 2nd step. It was impossible for the 1st step to make it here. When Ling Han heard this, he wasn't angry, but rather happy. He sized up these 12 people, but was greatly disappointed, because these 12 people were actually only in the 2nd step. He held on to a sliver of hope, and said, "Seeing that you guys are so arrogant, is there a senior of the 5th step behind you?" The 12 people looked at each other. What was going on? Was this guy afraid? He directly asked about their background. These people laughed loudly. As long as they could become heavenly venerables. Which one of them wasn't a genius? They were arrogant to the bone. How could they be like this, terrified in just a moment? Since you know we're not to be trifled with, then hurry up and get lost. These people all shouted at Ling Han. Ling Han broke into a grin and charged forward to unleash a flurry of punches and kicks. Pung pung pung. Just how powerful was he? With a flurry of punches, the 12 of them all screamed in agony. Their limbs were broken, and they were in an extremely tragic state. These people were both shocked and angry. Ling Han laughed loudly. Hurry up and call your elders over. I'll wait here. These people were both angry and shocked. Wasn't this guy a coward? Why had he suddenly become so fierce? But they knew that they were far from being Ling Han's match, so they all fled, afraid that if they said another word, they would be turned into dregs by Ling Han. Watching these 12 people leave, Ling Han rubbed his hands, appearing to be slightly excited. Is there a need to go so far? The Empress said with a smile. Ling Han smiled and said, I have nothing better to do anyway. Although he said this, the anticipation in his eyes had long since sold him out. Almost a day passed, and Ling Han finally saw the return of those 12 people that he had been looking forward to. He swept a glance over them, and couldn't help but look disappointed. This was because although these 12 people had invited 5 reinforcements, these 5 people were only in the 4th step. What happened to the promised 5th step? Chapter 2894. Ling Han's gaze swept over. He didn't see the promised 5 steps, but he saw another person. Heavenly Venerable White Flames. At that time, he obtained the 9th talisman in the overlapping space of the foreign battlefield, and then the foreign battlefield collapsed. When he arrived at Ling City, he was chased and intercepted by many Heavenly Venerables, one of whom was Heavenly Venerable White Flames. At that time Ling Han said, I'll remember you. However, at that time, Ling Han was a 1st step and couldn't beat a 4th step. Later, after advancing to the 2nd step, the world was so big, and he didn't know where to find people. Moreover, he had so many things to do, so he forgot about Heavenly Venerable White Flames. He never thought that at this time, Heavenly Venerable White Flames would take the initiative to deliver himself. He couldn't help but reveal a smile, and said, I've waited for you guys for a long time, but you guys are only a few 4th steps, really not enough to fill my teeth. What an arrogant junior. A red-robed old man said coldly. He was a 4th step elite, so he naturally wouldn't take a 3rd step seriously. In his opinion, Ling Han was just courting death. After all, he has a 4th step backing him. No wonder his mouth is cheap, another young man in purple said. He only looked young, but in reality, he had lived for who knows how many epochs, and was also a 4th step. He said this while looking at Hunyo. As a Heavenly Venerable of the same level, he obviously saw Hunyo's cultivation at a glance. However, Heavenly Venerable White Flames didn't dare to be careless, and said, Everyone, don't underestimate this young man. He is Ling Han. Ling Han. The other 4 4th steps all looked thoughtful. They seemed to have heard this name before. Could it be that Ling Han? The purple-robed 4th step suddenly clapped his hands. That brat who repeatedly broke records on the foreign battlefield. At that time, Ling Han was only 1 step, so in his opinion, he was obviously a brat. The red-robed 4th step, and the other 2 also clicked their tongues in wonder. Only how many hundreds of millions of years had passed, and the original 1 step had already become 3 steps. This growth speed was too shocking. All of them had thoughts of retreating. Was it worth it to become enemies with a rising star with boundless prospects for the sake of a mine? Although they could still suppress Ling Han now, what about in 1 billion years or 10 billion years? When Ling Han becomes a 5-step martial artist, he'll be able to beat them up. Fortunately, it was too difficult to cross the 4th step to the 5th step. Look, even Xian Chihu, Lin Yulian, and the others had spent over an epoch, but they were still stuck at the 4th step. This was sufficient to prove how difficult it was to take this step. If even the 3 greatest geniuses of the past 10,000 years were like this, then there was no need to mention Ling Han. He couldn't possibly be compared to the three of them, right? Therefore, the only thing they were thinking about was whether they should give this future powerhouse some face and put themselves in a high position to take the initiative. Ling Han, you've contributed greatly in the Outerium battlefield as well. So we're willing to give this mine to you because of that. The red-robed fourth step said. However, you were the one who injured these juniors. As long as you apologize, we'll let this matter go. In his eyes, this was already giving Ling Han enough face. And this was still because of Ling Han's future potential. If it had been the other three steps, he would have directly made a move to suppress him. How could he have been so polite? Ling Han smiled faintly. First of all, we discovered this mine first, and we're already mining it. What you're doing is snatching it by force. How can you say that you're giving it to us? Secondly, these people spoke rudely, so I'm only punishing them slightly. I'm already being merciful by not taking their lives. The purple-robed fourth step glared at him. You don't want to apologize? Ling Han ignored him and looked at heavenly venerate white flames. Little white, I remember saying that I would look for you, right? Little white heavenly venerate white flames couldn't help but raise his eyebrows, and he had the urge to attack. However, he knew that Ling Han was a monster. Back then, he was able to match a three-step powerhouse when he was only at the first step. Although the higher the level, the weaker his ability to fight above his level was, this kid should still be able to fight a four-step powerhouse. Therefore, he suppressed this impulse. He wasn't fully confident in a one-on-one fight, so he had to tie several allies to the same chariot. He smiled faintly. I've seen many small characters like you. How can I remember what you said? He hadn't taken Ling Han seriously before. Who would have thought that after just a few 100 million years, Ling Han had already advanced to the third step, enough to threaten his existence? Ling Han laughed. Today I'll settle old scores. Junior, you're too arrogant. A blue-robed fourth step snorted. He was very dissatisfied with Ling Han's attitude. At the heavenly venerate level, the hierarchy was extremely strict. How could Ling Han be so arrogant? Yes, as long as one was a heavenly venerate, they would stand at the top of the world. Even if a one-step powerhouse met a seven-step powerhouse, they would only need to cup their hands in greeting. However, this didn't mean that a one-step powerhouse could be presumptuous in front of a seven-step powerhouse. Therefore, Ling Han's wanton words in front of a four-step powerhouse made them all angry. It was just a three-step powerhouse. Ling Han shrugged. Arrogant. Haha, that's because I have strength. Of course, I'm confident when I have strength. Purple-robed, and the other four-step powerhouses didn't know what to say. How could this kid boast so shamelessly? It seems that this can't end peacefully, heavenly venerate white flames said faintly. The white flames heavenly venerable asked calmly. He was not surprised by this kind of result. Previously, when Ling Han was still at the first step, he had been arrogant and egotistical when facing an opponent who was at the fourth step, so it was not strange for him to behave like this. Ling Han, don't be long-winded with them. Hurry up and fight. Hunyo jumped over. She was also a belligerent. She opened her small mouth, revealing two sharp canine teeth. Ling Han looked at heavenly venerate white flames. Little white, do you dare to fight with me? I won't bully you, just use one hand. For a heavenly venerate, there was no difference between using two hands and using one finger. But Ling Han's words were openly ridiculing, causing heavenly venerate white flame's face to instantly darken. No matter how freakish Ling Han was, a mere three-step powerhouse actually dared to ridicule him, making him extremely displeased. This heavenly venerate will teach you the principles of being a person. That purple-robed fourth step took the lead to attack, suppressing Ling Han. A mere three-step powerhouse, even if he had a legendary reputation, he didn't take it to heart at all. Ling Han shook his head, condensed his left hand, and blasted towards purple-robed fourth step. Pung! With a heavy sound, the surrounding mountains collapsed piece by piece, and the heavens and earth suffered terrifying damage. Purple-robed fourth step couldn't help but retreat, and only stopped after retreating more than a dozen steps. However, how far could a heavenly venerate cross with one step? He had long since disappeared, but he left quickly and came quickly as well. After a few more steps, he appeared again. He revealed a look of shock because Ling Han stood steadily and motionless, as if the two's cultivation levels should be switched, and Ling Han was only at the 4-step powerhouse. Chapter 2896. A Beautiful Romance. Even Heavenly Venerate White Flames did not expect such a result, and he turned pale with fright. 3 steps against 4 steps, and he still had the upper hand? Damn it! 4 steps Purple Robe took a deep breath. So you are so monstrous. Not bad, not bad. Previously, it was indeed us juniors who had eyes but failed to see. We were only asking to be humiliated. Ling Han had the battle prowess of a 4 steps, which meant that he was a 4 steps Heavenly Venerate. 3 steps Purple Robe had been rude to him, so they deserved to be beaten by him. Just like how Ling Han had been rude to him just now, he did not hesitate to suppress him. However, it won't be so easy to resolve now, he said lightly, but his tone was full of killing intent. He had made a fool of himself in front of everyone. A 4 steps Purple Robe was actually no match for a 3 steps Purple Robe. Wang. A vague symbol appeared on his forehead, and his entire body also exuded a silver light, his aura skyrocketing. With the support of the Heavenly Venerate symbol, his battle prowess instantly increased by more than 10 times. 8th rate symbol. Although this was only an 8th rate symbol, Heavenly Venerate symbols were rare, and those that could be obtained from origin stones were basically all 9th rate symbols. Thus 8th rate symbols were very, very extraordinary. He roared again, and the space between his eyebrows split open. A pagoda flew out. There were a total of 18 levels on it, and each level was like colored glass. Chaotic aura dripped down from it. He roared and pushed the pagoda toward Ling Han. The pagoda rotated gently, constantly enlarging. As the chaotic aura fell, it seemed heavier than a plane. This was not impossible, because it was refined by a 4 steps Purple Robe. It was not difficult for it to collapse a lower plane with one blow. Ling Han smiled faintly and pointed with a finger. Bang! He was so calm and collected, but 4 steps Purple Robe's pagoda was immediately sent flying, and his entire person was knocked back again. This time, everyone's expression did not just change, but they were shocked to the bone. Not only had 4 steps Purple Robe used the Heavenly Venerate symbol, but he had also taken out his Heavenly Venerate treasure and activated it with a secret technique. It could be said that he had fully exerted his strength. But how had Ling Han dealt with it? He had only casually pointed with a finger, yet the purple-clothed precious artifact flew out of her hands, and her body was sent flying. What kind of huge difference in strength was this? Ling Han had taken 4 steps, and Ze had taken 3 steps. This was a result that everyone could accept. Again, Ling Han took 4 steps towards Purple Dress. Purple Dress had already run back to him for the 2nd time. He had been merciful, and had only sent her flying, but he had not heavily injured her. Zebu gritted his teeth, but couldn't say anything. What can I say? He couldn't even crush his opponent with 4 steps, and went all out. Yet he was easily defeated. Did he still have the face to say anything? However, he was still unconvinced. He felt that there was a limit to how much stronger Ling Han was compared to him. In fact, he wasn't even injured twice. Most importantly, Ling Han's attitude was too displeasing. It was as if he wasn't an Empyrean, but a passerby. Young man, you are indeed a monster with astonishing battle prowess. The blue-robed man took a step forward. However, if you are too arrogant, you will inevitably offend many people. Have you ever heard of this saying before? He paused for a moment. 2 fists are no match for 4 hands. Ling Han laughed loudly and wagged his finger. I've only heard of this saying. A lion enters a flock of sheep. The explanation is that you are all a bunch of trash. No matter how many of you there are. What's the use? I will suppress you all myself. Being ridiculed by him, the 5 4 steps, including Empyrean white flames, all revealed expressions of extreme anger. He was too arrogant and too arrogant. Young man, it's not a good thing to show off too much, Empyrean White Flames said lightly. Today, I will teach you a good lesson. 5 4-step cultivators walked out together. Hong, they all operated their Empyrean symbols, and primal chaos energy flowed out from their pores, turning into 5 deities. Any one of them could suppress the heavens with a single hand. Ling Han didn't care. His current goal was already set on the 5 steps. As for the 4 steps, let alone 5, even 100 might not be enough. Die! The 5 Empyreans attacked in unison, suppressing Ling Han. This was an incomparably terrifying power. And it was enough to make any 4th step cultivator's expression change and retreat. Ling Han casually pointed with his finger again. Pung! The 5 Empyreans immediately scattered like flowers, completely unable to withstand a single blow. Pa! 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 Empyrean white flames, and the others fell to the ground one after another. This time, Ling Han had used too much power, causing each of them to cough up blood. They couldn't stop it no matter what. The 3 steps and 2 steps widened their mouths, and their eyes stared blankly. How was this possible? How could they accept this? 5 4 steps, but they were defeated as easily as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. It was as if they were not facing a 3-step powerhouse, but a 5-step powerhouse. 5-step powerhouse. They looked at Ling Han, and their bodies couldn't help but tremble. Could this person be able to cross 2 realms? However, going from the 4-step to the 5-step was a huge leap. In this world, there were not many people who had the combat prowess of the 5-step at the 4-step, not to mention that Ling Han was only at the 3-step. A monster, an absolute monster. Ling Han said to Empyrean white flames. I said that I'll remember you. One day, I'll settle the score with you, right? Empyrean white flame's heart was like dead ashes. This monster was definitely not human. He could have the power of a 5-step at the 3-step realm. He said sadly, that's right. All right. Ling Han threw a punch. Pung. Empyrean white flames was immediately blown up. Back then, the other party had come to kill him, and wanted to refine the Empyrean symbol. He hadn't given him a way out, so why should he ask Ling Han to show mercy? Of course he had killed him. Ling Han took another step towards the remaining 4 cultivators of the 4th rank. His gaze swept over them, causing them to involuntarily tremble. Sir, we are from the Xianwu Union, the purple-clothed 4-steps said. At this time, they could only use their backer to scare Ling Han. Xianwu Union? Ling Han was surprised. Previously, he had killed the members of the Xianwu Union, and didn't even participate in the competition for the last and most valuable mineral vein. He could only retreat, and find a place to break through in seclusion. Who would have thought that they would run into people from the Martial Proclamation Union here? The Xianwu Union was a 5-step force. Although it was inferior to a 6-step force, there were only about 106-step forces in the world, so a 5-step force was not bad. Seeing that Ling Han was hesitating, the purple-clothed 4-steps, and the others revealed excited expressions. They had found a slim chance of survival. Ling Han chuckled. What's Fei Baiju's father's position in the Xianwu Union? Lord Fei Baiju. The purple-clothed 4-steps was startled. He didn't expect Ling Han to mention Fei Baiju and his father. However, the hope in his heart grew stronger. It would be even better if they were friends. Lord Fei Baiju and Lord Qi Xian established the Xianwu Union together. He is one of the 2 union leaders. He couldn't help but ask, Sir, do you know young Master Fei? He didn't dare to say that Fei Baiju was already dead. He was afraid that Ling Han wouldn't recognize this friendship. I know him, of course I know him. Ling Han smiled. I killed him with my own hands. How could I not know him? You really like to joke. Puff. The purple-clothed 4-steps and the others all choked. Chapter 2898. Fei Wu was similarly shocked. He had the upper hand, but his cultivation level was much higher than Ling Han's. Furthermore, he was only a 5th-step cultivator. He had crossed the huge barrier of 4 steps. He believed that only the greatest prodigies of all time like Lin Yu Lian and Xian Qihu had the qualifications to fight him at the 4th step. But Ling Han was only at the 3rd step. How could he not be dumbfounded? But in the middle of a fierce battle, although he had the upper hand, he could not suppress Ling Han at all. How could he be careless? Therefore, he immediately gathered all his energy and fought fiercely with Ling Han. Boom! The 2 fought fiercely. One was a 5th-step cultivator. The other had the combat ability of a 5th-step cultivator. They were locked in battle, Ling Han was only using his opponent to test his combat ability. Therefore, as long as Fei Wu did not use his ultimate move, he would not use it. However, seeing that his normal combat ability could not suppress Ling Han in a short period of time, Fei Wu quickly changed his strategy. A heavenly venerate symbol lit up, instantly increasing his combat ability by more than 30 times. He was indeed a 5th-step heavenly venerate. He had mastered a 6th-grade symbol. This time, his aura skyrocketed, and he instantly gained the upper hand. If Ling Han did not respond, he would be heavily injured within 10 moves, and would not be able to last 20 moves. Ling Han laughed loudly, and also activated a symbol, increasing his strength by more than 40 times. Originally, there was only a 5 or 6 times difference in strength between him and Fei Wu. Now that the heavenly venerate symbol had appeared, it made up for his lack of raw strength, and pulled their combat ability to the same level. What? Fei Wu and Qi Xian exclaimed at the same time. They never imagined that Ling Han had mastered a 5th-grade symbol. One had to know that this 6th-grade symbol was not something they had dug out from rocks. Instead, it was something they had comprehended after countless years of derivation. But Ling Han was only a 3rd-step heavenly venerate. Not to mention that he had just broken through. Even if he had been in this realm for countless years, how could he be qualified to derive a heavenly venerate symbol? 7th grade at most. This was incredible. Not only was this young man's talent monstrous, but he also had the ability to fight above his cultivation level. Furthermore, he had grasped the symbol of a 5th-rate heavenly venerate. Qi Xian's eyes flashed with greed. Although the raw stones here could produce Empyrean symbols, there weren't any high-level ones. That was a 5th-grade symbol. Even he had not grasped it yet. He was like this, and Fei Wu was naturally no exception. No matter if it was revenge for his son's death, or the heavenly exalt symbol on Ling Han's body, it caused him to wish for nothing more than to kill Ling Han immediately and seize all of Ling Han's secrets. He believed that Ling Han had more than just a 5th-rate heavenly venerate symbol. Fate rises from 3 lives completely extinguishes impermanence. He said in a low voice. His palms smashed out. Endless symbols were destroyed. These were definitely not the symbols of an Empyrean, but their power was shockingly great. Ling Han suddenly felt that the world was impermanent, and that there was nothing left to live for. But with his tenacious willpower, he immediately shattered this negative emotion. He was slightly surprised. A 5th-step Empyrean really couldn't be underestimated. They could actually shake his willpower. Do you think that a 5th-step Empyrean is just one more kind of power than a 4th-step Empyrean? Fei Wu sneered. This is only a superficial difference. But the fusion of 4 different kinds of power can produce many changes. This is unimaginable. His palms struck out again and again, as if splitting the heavens and splitting the earth, as if destroying all life. Ling Han was swept by this power a few times. His clothes were instantly torn to shreds, and cracks also appeared on his skin. It had to be known that the two of them were roughly equal in strength, but the wind that Fei Wu created had such power. It was truly inconceivable. With a thought, Ling Han also revolved his fist of rage. He didn't believe that the Tao that he had comprehended would be inferior to someone else's. Boom! His fist swung out in rage. He was like a crazed demon as he attacked fiercely. Shwa shwa shwa. Ling Han's body was constantly slashed by the wind, but he didn't care about them. He just stared at Fei Wu and fiercely attacked. His attacks were like a long river in the sea, each punch more ferocious than the last. Finally, Fei Wu was hit by his fist. Pung! Fei Wu was sent flying, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Fine, he had already spat out all the advantages he had just gained. A heavy blow in exchange for Ling Han's minor injuries was not worth it at all. Trash is indeed trash. Ling Han shook his head, looking somewhat regretful. You didn't give yourself a good name. You can't blame others. Fei Wu almost spat out another mouthful of blood. If it was another 3rd-step Empyrean, he naturally wouldn't take it to heart. However, Ling Han was a powerhouse that could rival him, so he naturally couldn't ignore his words. Have you had enough? Why do you keep harping on my name? Is it fun? Brother Fei, let's join forces, Qi Xian said. But he had already punched out at Ling Han. It was incomparably domineering. He was not in the middle stage of the fifth step, but in the late stage of the fifth step. Coupled with the addition of a sixth-grade symbol, his battle prowess naturally surpassed that of Ling Han. Boom, this punch was incomparably terrifying. Ling Han's figure flashed, and he dodged this attack. He indifferently said, 5 steps against 3 steps, and you still want to join forces? You have no respect for your elders. I just want to teach you a lesson, Qi Xian said indifferently. At his level, he no longer cared about what others said. Of course, Ling Han's mouth was especially poisonous, so this was another matter. Ling Han shook his head. When the two of you appeared together, I guessed that with your shamelessness, you would definitely join forces. Otherwise, why did you come here? Qi Xian didn't care at all, and he punched out again. Ling Han, why don't you dare to take it head-on? Fei Wu also flew over, attacking with all his might. Aren't you very arrogant? Ling Han was also a little speechless. The two of you joined forces to attack me, and you still want me to take it head-on? And although I already thought of your shamelessness, I still didn't expect that you would be so shameless. The two fifth-step heavenly venerables acted as if they didn't hear anything. No matter what Ling Han said, as long as they killed him, then there would naturally be peace. However, do you think that it's possible to kill me? Ling Han said indifferently. Boom! What responded to him was a violent attack from the two heavenly venerables. Ling Han let out a long howl, and the heavenly venerable's symbol that he had used earlier immediately dimmed. In its place was the only first-class symbol that he had mastered. Instantly, his battle prowess increased by more than 40 times. Pung pung pung. He sent Fei Wu and Qi Xian flying with just 3 punches and 2 kicks. In terms of strength, he had absolute suppression. This time, Fei Wu and Qi Xian looked like they had seen a ghost, and their eyes widened. In front of this power, they were like children meeting an adult. They were completely unable to match up to it. What kind of heavenly venerable symbol is this? It can actually support such a terrifying power. They both said in a trembling voice. At least 70 times stronger. No, it should be 80 times stronger. This is a first-class symbol. The two's eyes lit up, and they were both surprised and delighted. Chapter 2899. First-rate symbol heavenly venerate symbols were extremely rare. Only 7 of them had ever appeared in the world. Otherwise, the 7th-rate heavenly venerate symbol that Ling Han had obtained in the extraterritorial battlefield wouldn't have attracted so many heavenly venerates. It was easy to imagine how amazing a first-rate symbol was. It could increase a heavenly venerate's strength by too much, let alone a 5th-step heavenly venerate. Even a 7th-step heavenly venerate would be envious. Junior, you really know how to surprise people, Qi Xian said with a smile on his face. In his opinion, even if Ling Han had a first-rate symbol, it wouldn't be enough to make him feel fear. Because if he and Fei Wu joined forces, they could completely block Ling Han. At most, they would be at a disadvantage. Even if they took 10,000 steps back, they would definitely be able to block him for 2 hours. He didn't believe that Ling Han could have a second first-rate heavenly venerate symbol. Oh, Ling Han smiled faintly. Surprise? I thought you were going to say you were going to scare me. Haha, you can't even imagine the trials and tribulations this heavenly venerate has experienced in his life. You want to scare this heavenly venerate with just this? Qi Xian said coldly, clearly disdainful. He was a 5th-step powerhouse. Which one of those who could reach this step wasn't a top powerhouse in the world? Fei Wu stood by the side and didn't rush him. Ling Han was still revolving that first-rate symbol. Thus, they were naturally happy to see Ling Han waste the symbol's energy. It would be best if he could drag this out for 2 hours. Then he and Qi Xian could easily harvest Ling Han's head and obtain more than one heavenly venerate symbol. At this time, he was already thinking about how to snatch that first-rate symbol. It was just too precious. Ling Han wasn't in a hurry. The first-rate symbol was his trump card. Wrong. He actually dared to call it a surprise. Haha, he would let him know that this was definitely a scare or nightmare. He stopped revolving the heavenly venerate symbol within his body. He wasn't stupid. Upon seeing this, Qi Xian and Fei Wu frowned their brows. They could only fight and force Ling Han to use his ultimate move. After exhausting this first-rate symbol, Ling Han would be at their mercy. At first, the two of them had their own plans. They were thinking about how they could obtain that first-rate symbol after Ling Han's death. But now that they had not dealt with Ling Han, it was too early to think about these things. Capture that brat. All right. The two of them tossed aside their petty schemes and rushed towards Ling Han, circulating their heavenly exalted symbols and unleashing all their secret techniques as they attacked Ling Han without holding back. Ling Han let out a long roar and once again operated the first-rate rune to clash with the two fifth-step experts. Pung pung pung. His strength was invincible, and Qi Xian and Fei Wu were like pieces of paper in front of him. With a casual punch or kick, they were sent flying, and soon they were riddled with wounds. If it had been another opponent, they would have definitely retreated. If they continued to be injured like this, it might affect their foundation and affect their ability to reach higher levels in the future. However, they could not retreat now. Ling Han was only at the third step, and the effect of the heavenly exalted symbol was limited. As long as they could endure through this period of Ling Han's dominance, it would be their turn to show off their might. With such thoughts in mind, they had to grit their teeth and hold on. A first-class symbol was definitely worth the risk. Ling Han naturally knew what they were thinking, but unfortunately, the two of them did not know that they had already been led by the nose by Ling Han. The two powerhouses desperately held on. Finally, 2 hours passed. The symbol on Ling Han's body quickly dimmed, and it could no longer be used. Brat, your time of death has come. Qi Xian and Fei Wu once again circulated a sixth-rate rune, and their combat strength was almost unaffected. Ha ha ha. They had finally held on until this moment. Ling Han smiled faintly. It's too early for you to be happy. You still don't know who the prey is, right? Are you trying to say that you still have a trump card? Qi Xian asked disdainfully. Don't tell me you have a second first-class symbol? Fei Wu also smiled. Open your eyes wide. Ling Han shouted. Wung wung wung. Densely packed symbols flickered within his body. There were more than 100 of them. Qi Xian and Fei Wu were both startled. They had not expected Ling Han to have so many heavenly exalted symbols. However, what was the use of having so many? They were not combined symbols, so how much power could they unleash? Bluff. Bang. Before Fei Wu could even finish his sentence, he was already struck by Ling Han's fist. He raised his fist to meet the attack, but his arm exploded upon contact. The remaining force did not dissipate, and immediately blasted a hole through his chest. The cold smile on Qi Xian's face immediately froze. What kind of terrifying strength was this? A single punch had broken through Fei Wu's defense and pierced through his body. Was he at the peak of the fifth step? Ling Han took advantage of his victory and continued to launch a series of furious punches at Fei Wu. Qi Xian hastily acted, wanting to pressure Ling Han so that Fei Wu could catch his breath. However, Ling Han didn't even look back. With just a single punch, Fei Wu was sent flying. All the bones in his body trembled for a long time, as if they were about to shatter. On the other side, the pressure on Fei Wu was even greater. Ling Han had already closed the distance between them, and Fei Wu could only raise his hands to block. Otherwise, he would undoubtedly die. But Ling Han's strength was just too great. In just 2 or 3 punches, Fei Wu's other arm had also turned into a rain of blood. He clenched his teeth and forcefully regrown his 2 arms. At the heavenly exalt realm, one's strength was inconceivably high, and their physique was also incomparably tough. But in truth, their regenerative abilities were inferior to immortal kings. How? That was because heavenly exalts had surpassed the rules, and immortal medicines were completely ineffective against them. There was only one way to forcefully regrow their limbs, and that was to use their own essence blood to do so. If a large amount of essence blood was consumed, a heavenly exalt would also be seriously injured. If it was serious, it wouldn't be strange for their realm to fall, let alone want to break through to a higher realm. But Fei Wu had no choice. If he didn't regrow his arms, then it would be his torso and spiritual sea that would be blown up. If this person died, then everything would be for naught. Pung pung pung. His arms were constantly regrown, and they were constantly blown up. This seemed to allow him to struggle at death's door. But Ling Han's strength was too terrifying. Not only did he blow up his arms, but the recoil also affected his whole body. Soon, he vomited blood repeatedly, and his resistance became weaker and weaker. Ling Han. Qi Xian charged back from a distance. He had been punched by Ling Han, and it was only now that he had suppressed the boiling in his body and charged back again. Ling Han ignored him, and each punch was more violent than the last. Pung pung pung. Fei Wu finally couldn't keep up with his rhythm and was blasted into pieces. A fifth-step powerhouse dead. Qi Xian was already close, but seeing this, he didn't say anything and turned to leave without hesitation. Chapter 2900. In terms of conventional battle prowess, Qi Xian acknowledged that he could crush Ling Han. However, he couldn't stop Ling Han from possessing a shocking combination of symbols. That was too terrifying, enough to increase Ling Han's strength by more than 200 times. And he, a late-stage fifth-step cultivator, could only concede defeat. Without Fei Wu, he was already smashed into a cripple by Ling Han's one punch. If he continued to put on a brave front and tried to resist, he would only be smashed into pieces by Ling Han. But if he didn't use up Ling Han's combination of symbols, wouldn't he never be Ling Han's match? Only by asking at least 3 or 4 fifth-step cultivators to engage in a battle of attrition against Ling Han. Then, as long as these 2 hours passed, Ling Han's strength would be beaten back to its original state. He didn't believe that Ling Han could possess a second combination of symbols. The problem was, if he forcefully resisted the current Ling Han, even a fifth-step cultivator would be smashed into pieces. Who would be willing to contribute to others? There was no such fool in this world. Qi Xian ran very quickly, but countless thoughts had already surged through his mind. Finally, he decided to kill with a borrowed knife. Whether it was that first-rate symbol, or the even more shocking combination of symbols, he was determined to take them all. Ling Han didn't chase for too long. The two of them could be considered the same tier now. And even if there was a difference in strength, if one wanted to leave, the other couldn't possibly catch up. It was a bit of a pity, but Ling Han didn't take it to heart. He was invincible in his heart, and with every passing day, he would grow a bit stronger. He didn't fear Qi Xian now, and he definitely wouldn't in the future. He first refined Fei Wu's life essence. Although Fei Wu was known as trash, his life force was exuberant to the extreme and shockingly dense. Although he was only one person, it was already enough to make Ling Han feel like he had eaten too much. If he also killed Qi Xian, he would definitely feel very uncomfortable. As expected of a fifth-step cultivator, his body tempered by 4 kinds of intrinsic power was practically a super great medicine. After spending some time, Ling Han completely refined this life essence. He stood up and continued to search for new minds with the Empress and Hunyo. Every once in a while, they would enter the celestial visitor residence to meet with the women. A family naturally had to be together. Additionally, Ling Han was also working hard to increase the bloodline of the old Ling family. However, even a freak like him could not rush this kind of thing. Tens of thousands or even hundreds of millions of years had passed, and none of the women's bellies had protruded, causing Hunyo to cry out that it was unfair. You can't bully a girl like this. This was a plane wrapped in bread. Inevitably, each plane would be slightly smaller than the previous one. Even high-level planes had differences. Therefore, after hundreds of millions of years of excavation, this layer of ore veins was quickly dug clean. Everyone turned their attention to the 5th plane. Indeed, there was such a plane, but the path down there was even more difficult. Under the intense pressure of the plane, the friction and collisions of the fundamental particles had reached an incomparably terrifying level. Even the 2nd step couldn't be forced through. Moreover, the mineral veins in the 5th level were even rarer. However, the chances of producing Empyrean symbols and great medicines were even higher. The profits from the 5th level weren't any lower than from the first 4 levels. It was at this time that Ling Han heard a piece of extremely unfavorable news for him. Someone said that Ling Han had a first-rate symbol on him, and even a complete 9-flow talisman. which, after being combined, could erupt with over 200 times the power. When Ling Han heard this news, his first reaction was naturally that Qi Xian was up to something. Now only Qi Xian knew this big secret of his. He only thought for a moment, and knew what Qi Xian was planning. This guy wanted to use others to waste the opportunity for him to use the first-rate symbol and the combined talisman, and then take the opportunity to charge out, kill him, and seize the Empyrean symbol. This scheme was quite well thought out, but upon careful thought, it was actually not reliable. Firstly, Ling Han also had the strength of the fifth step. Even if Qi Xian had the advantage in battle prowess, how could he stop him from escaping? Secondly, there were still 6 steps in this world. And if they made a move, would there still be a chance for him, Qi Xian? Of course, Ling Han would not have a headache over Qi Xian. He knew that he would soon face the pursuit of many powerhouses. Sure enough, a few years later, the 3 of them encountered a group of powerhouses, and without a word, they directly attacked. In the end, they were easily killed by Ling Han. A mere 4th step actually dared to attack him? Obviously, Qi Xian had only said that Ling Han had a precious Empyrean symbol, but he had not told him the truth. In fact, Ling Han's battle prowess had actually reached the 5th step. If he had really said that, then naturally even a 5th step powerhouse would be afraid, and would not easily attack. Wouldn't that just be making a gift for others? This was just the beginning. Following this, more and more Empyreans came to find Ling Han. Ling Han! A 5th step powerhouse appeared. He wore a black robe, and his entire body exuded a faint chill. Hand over your Empyrean symbol, and you can be spared from death. Ling Han looked around. Just you. The black-robed 5th step could not help but laugh in anger. To suppress a mere 3rd step like you, do I need a few 5th steps? Ling Han nodded very seriously. You're right. Come. You don't intend to be obedient. The black-robed 5th step attacked, suppressing Ling Han. Bang! 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 Ling Han counterattacked with a fist. He had only used a 7th-rate symbol, but it was enough to suppress his opponent. What? The black-robed 5th step turned pale with fright. This was something he had not expected at all. Not only could a 3rd step rival him, but he could even suppress him. He hurriedly activated an Empyrean symbol, and his battle prowess instantly soared as he fought with Ling Han. He was at the middle stage of the 5th step, and his regular battle prowess was slightly stronger than Ling Han's. Furthermore, he was activating a 6th-rate symbol, which had a far greater effect on his strength than a 7th-rate symbol. Naturally, he was able to instantly turn the tables and suppress Ling Han. Do you think that I don't have a high-tier Empyrean symbol? He said coldly, appearing very disdainful. Is that so? Ling Han could not help but shake his head. He was already activating a 1st-rate symbol. You want to compete with me with the Empyrean symbol? Are you stupid? The 1st-rate symbol appeared, increasing Ling Han's strength by more than 80 times. Naturally, he had the upper hand. The black-robed 5th step was speechless. That's right. Hadn't he come to find Ling Han because he had a 1st-rate symbol and an even more terrifying combination symbol? Now he was actually competing with him with the Empyrean symbol. Wasn't that stupid? He revealed a look of shock. The current Ling Han was already so terrifying. What if his opponent used that combination symbol as well? Would he die? With this thought, he naturally wanted to retreat. You want to leave? It's too late now. Ling Han shook his head. Previously, it had been easy for the other party to escape, but now that he was entangled with him, it would be strange if he could still escape. Reading on a phone is more refreshing. Chapter 2902. Xianqihu just stood there. He had at least 4 first-rate symbols on him, but no one dared to snatch them. Xianqihu was a supreme martial artist at the peak of the 5th step. It could be said that no one below the 6th step could suppress him. Moreover, his father was a 7th-step supreme martial artist. If anyone dared to touch Xianqihu, wouldn't they be afraid that Xianfu would give up everything and come looking for them? Who wouldn't fear the power of 7 steps? Ling Han entered into the void, and only made a simple turn before he once again returned to this lost overlapping plane. He sat cross-legged, digesting the experience of his battle with Xianqihu. Fighting against such a powerful expert, a genius, he still benefited a lot. Not only did he improve his cultivation, but he also refined his combat techniques. This time, he spent 3 years in seclusion. This was because his thoughts could be increased. Otherwise, it would have taken much longer. There seems to be something wrong, he muttered. But he couldn't figure out what was wrong. So he shook his head and stopped paying attention to the problem. Just as he was about to act, he suddenly caught a special signal. Meng Dong. He had finally appeared. Previously, Meng Dong had made an agreement with him. When he caught this signal, Meng Dong would want to see him. This kind of signal could only be used by special people like them, and only they could capture it. It was a very safe and reliable method of communication. Of course, this could only be used when they were relatively close, even if they were all heavenly venerates. This was a price that had to be paid in order to ensure their safety. However, even though both sides sent out the same signal, there was still a slight difference. Each person's unique will would be added, and it was completely possible to distinguish who sent out the signal. If not for this, Ling Han would have killed Meng Dong long ago, and used this signal to lure out all the remaining frenzy members. If he killed one after another, he would be able to solve this big problem very quickly. In just a short moment, Meng Dong flew over. Little brother, long time no see. You really know how to run. If I didn't see you fight against Xan Chihu a few years ago, I really wouldn't know where to find you, he said. Ling Han took the opportunity to say, I don't know where our base camp is. Even if I wanted to find you, I wouldn't have anywhere to go. Meng Dong laughed heartily and said, No rush, there's a mission for you to complete right now. This is a test I have for you. As long as you complete this task, you will be accepted into this place. Ling Han was shocked. Madness was still worried about him. How had he exposed himself, that she was actually on guard against him? When he thought about it again, Ling Han felt relieved. The others had all awakened as soon as they advanced into the heavenly venerable tier. And he was the only one who had reached the second step. If it were not for the fact that Madness had made a move and forced him to see those memories, he would not have known that he actually had a very deep connection with Madness. Even so, he still did not betray. Why would Frenzy trust him? This was an old fox who had lived for God knows how long. How could he trust others so easily? He pretended to be angry. You still don't believe me? Meng Dong hurriedly waved his hand. Little brother, this is also for the sake of caution. After all, we're doing something earth-shattering. Ling Han was only complaining on purpose. This was a normal reaction. He said, All right, what is the mission this time? Meng Dong shook his head. It's not convenient to talk about it here. Follow me. This guy was quite careful. Ling Han did not object and followed him. After walking for a few days, they arrived at an abandoned orvane. There were stone skins cut off everywhere, and Meng Dong had constructed a simple array formation that could completely isolate the divine sense of an Empyrean. The Empyrean stone had such a function to begin with, and with the help of the array formation, it was naturally even safer. Wait a few days, Meng Dong said. Ling Han did not ask, and only sat cross-legged. After a few days, a man suddenly appeared. Let me introduce you, this is Brother Ba Duo. Meng Dong pointed at the man and said, then pointed at Ling Han. This is Ling Han. Brother Ling, I've heard of your name for a long time. When are you going to spar? Ba Duo said, his face full of fighting spirit. This was a third-step Empyrean. To be chosen by Frenzy, or to be affected by Frenzy's will, his strength should be very strong, no weaker than Meng Dong's. Ling Han smiled faintly. All right. In a battle of the same level, who would he be afraid of? Meng Dong hurriedly stopped the two of them from fighting and said with a smile, There's no hurry to spar. We're all brothers, and there will be plenty of opportunities. Completing my mission is more important. Only then did Ba Duo shut his mouth, but his gaze towards Ling Han was still full of provocation. Ling Han naturally would not be afraid, and he also looked at the other party provocatively. As long as the other party dared to attack, he would definitely beat the other party to the ground with a punch, shattering all his teeth. The mission this time is to send this thing into the core of the Frosty Flame dimension. Meng Dong finally revealed the specifics of the mission. He took out an item. It was a sphere with a black luster flowing on it, emitting an incomparably evil aura. Ling Han's gaze tensed up. What is this? You only need to complete the mission. Don't ask what you shouldn't ask. Baduo immediately shouted. Hey, hey, hey. Meng Dong hurriedly waved his hand. We're all family, there's nothing I can't ask. He chuckled. This is something that I refined, and it has a strong corrosive effect on the core of the dimension. He looked at Ling Han and continued. As long as this thing is thrown into the core of the frosty flame dimension, it will greatly weaken the strength of this dimension, allowing me to have the upper hand in a collision of dimensions. Ling Han's heart skipped a beat. This move was really vicious. The core of a dimension was the heart of a dimension. As long as it was corroded, it would greatly weaken the strength of the dimension. Of course, it was extremely difficult to do this, especially for a high-level dimension like the Frosty Flame dimension. Even a sixth-step powerhouse would be turned into ashes if he tried to resist it. Could this thing really work? Ling Han did not know if this was frenzy deliberately testing him. Perhaps it did not have the effect that Meng Dong said it would have. But what if it was true? Ling Han hesitated. Should he directly take down Meng Dong and the others to resolve this plot against the Frosty Flame dimension? Or should he continue to feign civility and be his spy to find all the hidden hands of frenzy? It was easy to take them down, but he would also break off this line. Moreover, if this was really a test against him, then it was fine. If this thing really worked, then even if he resolved this time, frenzy could still come a second or third time. There were a lot of people that could be used, and he was not the only one. Thinking of this, Ling Han nodded. Understood. End of chapter. Chapter 2903. Okay, I'll leave this to you. Meng Dong nodded and passed the things in his hands to Barduo. Barduo will lead this trip. Barduo revealed a smug expression. See, he's the one who has gained my trust. Ling Han was slightly surprised. Looking at Barduo's expression, it was clear that he was wholeheartedly working for madness. He even felt a sense of honor. He was already a sky sovereign. How could he have such thoughts? Sky sovereigns were high above. They were above everything. But Barduo was passionate about working for madness. He was even jealous of her. This was unbelievable. Yes, it was like a few sons fighting for favor, trying to please their father. Okay, I wish you success in advance. I'll set up a celebration feast for you and wait for your return, Meng Dong said with a smile. Let's go, genius, Barduo said to Ling Han. Ling Han stepped forward, and when he neared Barduo, he suddenly threw a punch. Pung. Firstly, Barduo had not expected that he would suddenly attack, and secondly, Ling Han's strength was much stronger than his. So how could he possibly dodge? He directly fell to the ground, feeling dizzy and disoriented, unable to get up for a while. Ling Han didn't follow up with another attack. Instead, he said calmly, "Watch your words. If it weren't for me, I would have killed you already." Meng Dong wanted to attack, but seeing that Ling Han didn't do anything else, and that Barduo was only beaten to the ground, he gave up on the idea. He said, "Ling Han, we're all on the same side. Don't hurt our friendship." Ling Han chuckled. "As long as no one is being cheap, I won't be aggressive." Barduo finally recovered. He crawled up, and when he heard Ling Han's words, he was instantly enraged. Wasn't this calling him a cheap person, right in front of his face? Okay. Mengla stopped him in time. Go. Don't mess up my plan. The corners of Barduo's mouth twitched slightly, but he did not say anything in the end. Instead, he turned around and left. Ling Han followed behind indifferently. Only after the two of them disappeared did Meng Dong look at the sky and murmur, "Little brother, do you have any ulterior motives? I should be able to test you this time." Ling Han followed Badwa at an unhurried pace. In fact, if Duan Ling Tian were to travel, he would be able to travel through the void quickly, because the power in his body could reflect the Devata realms. Unlike Baduo, who could only reflect the fiery frost realm, and had to travel in one direction. The void was an extremely complicated space. The shortest distance between 2 points was definitely not a straight line. Zhou Heng should be waiting for them in the frost plain. Previously, when he had slapped Baduo to the ground, He had not done so simply to vent his anger. Rather, he had also seized the opportunity to unleash a wisp of the power of existential plane, forming a clone. However, this clone had been hiding in the ground beneath Baduo all this time. There was a large number of rock sheets here that could block out the divine sense of a heavenly venerate. As long as this clone did not actively expose itself, Meng Dong and Barduo would not be able to find out anything. After Meng Dong left, the doppelganger immediately went to find Zhou Heng and explain the current situation. With the strength of a sixth-step cultivator, it would not be difficult for him to catch up to them. It was not that Ling Han could not deal with Barduo, but he definitely did not have the strength to make Barduo lose consciousness without being able to react. After traveling through the void for a few thousand years, they finally broke through the planar barrier and entered their destination, the fiery frost plane. Boom! Void energy surged out, but the planar force immediately repaired it, cutting off the void storm. This caused a huge impact, causing Ling Han and Barduo to tremble, and they felt as though their bodies were being distorted. Right at this moment, an indescribable mighty force assaulted them. Barduo did not even have time to react before he fainted. Xiao! A figure flashed, and Zhou Heng appeared. Ling Han was not surprised. This was because his clone had told Zhou Heng to carry out an ambush here. Another heavenly venerate would definitely not be able to do this. Only Ling Han, who had the power of the Devata plane reflected in his body, could accurately calculate the exit. Moreover, only a powerhouse like Zhou Heng could make Barduo not react at all. After all, this was not as simple as killing him. Ling Han searched out the black sphere from Barduo's body and handed it to Zhou Heng. His figure trembled, and he retracted his planar force. Zhou Heng took the sphere and carefully sensed it. After a while, a solemn expression appeared on his face. There is indeed a frenzied power inside, and it has a strong corrosive effect. If I really throw it into the planar core, it will seriously weaken the fiery frost plane. Senior, can you replicate it? Ling Han asked. He did not want to expose his identity just like this. Thus, the best way was to use a substitution plan and throw the fake thing into the planar core. This way, he could still stay with Meng Dong and the others and spy on their identities. At the same time, he would not weaken the fiery frost plane and help the evildoer. Zhou Heng shook his head. This is a power unique to frenzied power. I can't replicate it. Just as Ling Han was feeling disappointed, Zhou Heng said, however, I will immediately make a trip to the extraterritorial battlefield and ask Master to help. He should be able to dispel the corrosive effect. He was a man of action, and he immediately rushed to the extraterritorial battlefield. Meanwhile, Ling Han sat down on Baduo's body and used his own power to suppress Baduo. Otherwise, he couldn't injure Baduo, and he had to keep him unconscious. How could that be possible? Fortunately, Zhou Heng returned in just over a month. He returned the black sphere to Ling Han. The problem has been solved. Ling Han nodded and placed the black sphere back on Barduo's body. Then he tore open space and re-entered the void. He calculated the position and tore open the void again. Xiao, the two of them flew out, and the power of the plane cut through the void storm, causing violent tremors. Barduo immediately woke up. His consciousness was still the same as a month ago. Very naturally, he took a step forward and landed firmly on the ground. Ling Han was one step behind him, and he also took a step forward. Barduo did not have a shred of doubt. 6 steps had personally acted in order to ensure that he would not sense anything. He strode forward, heading toward the planar core. Just 10 or so days later, they arrived at the planar core. This was actually quite a distance away, and it was impossible to really get close. This was the core of a high-level planar core. Even 6 steps would be killed, let alone a mere 3 steps. Barduo took out the black sphere, looked at Ling Han and said, I'm going to throw it away. Ling Han frowned. Don't talk nonsense. Are you asking for a beating? Barduo was furious, but he forcefully suppressed it. He raised his right hand, and Xiao, this black sphere was thrown toward the planar core. This black sphere could not get close at all. It was immediately shattered by the huge force around the planar core. However, a black aura moved within it, turning into countless tentacles. End of this chapter. Reading on a phone is more refreshing. Chapter 2905. This wasn't impossible, because he already had the first and second symbols. He could use their resonance to deduce the Empyrean symbol. This was a compulsory course for powerhouses of the third step and above, but it was far too difficult to imagine it. The difficulty for Ling Han was much lower now. Moreover, he also had the experience of repairing an Empyrean symbol. The power of trillions of planes within his body was absolutely more advantageous than any other Empyrean. However, before he went into seclusion, he also heard a lot of news. For example, the primordial gemstone masters were being hunted down, and a large number of them were killed because they were too arrogant before. Now that our masters were trash, which celestial venerable would still care? In the past, you actually dared to show disrespect to the heavenly venerables, even bossing them around. Didn't they know what kind of existence an Empyrean was? Even the heavens had to respect them. Aside from people like Great Master Xian Lai, who knew how to conduct himself, and was still living a comfortable life, the group of Origin Gem Masters had suffered a huge blow. It started suddenly, and it ended shockingly quickly. Relying on others to elevate one's status was ultimately not secure. Only one's own strength was real. Ling Han shook his head. He did not take it to heart, and went into seclusion. He calmly observed his sea of consciousness. Then he activated the power of tens of thousands of planes within his body. The two strings of celestial venerable symbols lit up, forming a faint connection. This set was the 9-stream talisman, and the other set was the 8-stream talisman. They were only missing a single symbol in the middle to completely link them together. Ling Han first deduced this symbol. If he could complete this symbol, that set of 9-stream talisman, and 1/3 of the 8-stream talisman, would be able to add a terrifying amount of power. Wung. The boundless power of the plane in his body shone, causing his sea of consciousness to seem to transform into the void, illuminating the heavens. Streaks of primal chaos energy gushed out from every single cell in his body, forming a vast ocean around him. Every single streak of primal chaos energy was incomparably heavy. If not for his existence, a single streak of primal chaos energy would be enough to destroy a low-level plane. His mind was clear, but his enlightenment was as resplendent as fireworks. It was as if he could see the birth and development of an entire origin world. The 6 essential strengths were the foundation, everything, and the Empyrean symbol was a tool that could communicate with the essential strengths. After who knew how many years passed, Ling Han's body trembled, and his eyes snapped open. There were no whites or blackness in his eyes, only chaos, and a strange aura. He wasn't an Empyrean, but he wasn't any weaker than one. He shook again, and woke up from this strange state. His face lit up with joy. He had finally deduced the first 8th grade symbol, and it glowed in his sea of consciousness. Come, my low-level combination symbol. 144 symbols revolved at the same time. At first, Ling Han was filled with anticipation, but then a look of surprise appeared on his face. His strength had increased by 262 times. Something wasn't right. His 8th rate rune combination could already increase his strength by 257 times. If he were to combine it with a complete 9th rate rune, the increase in strength would definitely exceed 300 times. Why is it so little? This was because the 9th stream talisman couldn't be combined with the 8th stream talisman. It was just like when you revolved the Empyrean runes that were unrelated to each other. No matter how many there were, you could only use the strongest of them. In Ling Han's hands, this was the strongest combination of symbols. Strange, the Empyrean symbol that he had deduced was definitely correct. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to increase the power of the 8th stream talisman. But why couldn't it be combined with the 9th stream talisman? Could it be that he needed a complete 8th stream talisman? Ling Han decided to continue deducing. He only needed 2, and they could resonate with neighboring Empyrean runes, so the difficulty of deducing wasn't too high. He went into seclusion once more. Time flew by, and after who knew how many years, Ling Han comprehended the second 8th rate rune. He connected the original 2 sets of 8th rate runes, and the increase in strength suddenly broke through 400 times. He didn't stop, and continued deducing the last 8th stream talisman. Time was already meaningless to him. Countless years passed, and Ling Han woke up for the 3rd time. 8th stream talisman Qi. Come. Ling Han couldn't help but be filled with anticipation. It should be enough this time, right? He revolved all the 9th stream and 8th stream talismans. Wang, the 222 Empyrean runes all lit up. Pung! The chamber he was in for seclusion instantly exploded. A terrifying power soared into the sky, breaking through the seal of this plane and piercing into the void. So many years had passed, and there weren't many people left here anymore. But there were still some people who hoped to get lucky and continued to explore. Perhaps there might be some origin stones left behind, but at this moment, everyone felt a chill in their hearts. Looking at that pillar of light that soared into the heavens, everyone below the Empyrean level knelt down. Even the Empyreans' hearts were beating wildly. The runes in their bodies automatically revolved, cheering and jumping for joy, as if they wanted to submit to that pillar of light. A complete Empyrean symbol that surpassed a 1st stream talisman was too terrifying. Yet there was no joy on Ling Han's face, because he discovered that the 2 sets of Empyrean symbols couldn't be used together. His strength had increased to an astonishing 999 times. But this was the might of the 8th stream talisman. The 9th stream talisman didn't have any effect at all. Strange. He had clearly gathered all the 8th stream talisman. So why couldn't he combine them with the 9th stream talisman? Was it because he couldn't combine them at all? Or did he need to gather all the Empyrean symbols before it could take effect? If it was the former, then there was no need to mention it. And if it was the latter, then the time needed would be incomparably long, and it might even be impossible to complete it in a day. Ling Han stopped the circulation of the Empyrean symbols and slowly nodded. It looked like it wasn't just because they had different amplification effects, but also because they each had their own special characteristics and could only be divided in this way. Look, the 8th stream talisman was adjacent to the 9th stream talisman. They could resonate and sense each other, but couldn't be used together. There was nothing that Ling Han was dissatisfied with. He now had a complete 8th stream talisman, and his strength could be amplified by close to 1,000 times. This was too terrifying. Even if he encountered Xian Chihu again, he was confident that he would be able to fight to his heart's content. It's time to go out and take a look. He came out of seclusion, and the Empress and the others were already waiting for him. And the time they had waited had shockingly reached 30 billion years. Ling Han couldn't help but be shocked. He didn't seem to have spent that much time. So how could it have been 30 billion years? Return to the fiery frost plane, the Empress said gently. Did everyone else go back? Ling Han asked. Yes, second brother Jinxue. And the others have already gone back. The Empress nodded. After 30 billion years, her cultivation level had also reached the late stage of the 3rd step. This speed could already be considered fast. After all, there was no longer any supply of great medicines. All right, let's go back too. Ling Han stretched out his hand and stored all the women into the celestial visitor house. Then he began to travel through the void. More than 10 years later, he returned to the fire frost plane. Immediately, he received a signal from Mengdong. End of chapter. Chapter 2906. Mengdong really should be looking for him. When he completed the mission, there should have been a celebration party waiting for him. But he was either busy mining or in seclusion for a long time. It was impossible for Mengdong to find him. Now that he had returned to the Firefrost Plain, the other party had finally arrived. Ling Han also sent a signal in response to Mengdong. After a while Mengdong arrived. You really made it hard for me to find you. Mengdong shook his head. After 30 billion years, he had already taken 4 steps. This speed was amazing. Even if it was not as fast as Xian Chihu and the others, it could be said to be rare. After all, in a sense, he was a creation of chaos. He believed that Lucia, Baduo, and the others had also reached 4 steps. Ling Han couldn't help but think of himself. After more than 30 billion years, he had only advanced a little. If the middle stage of 3 steps to the late stage was divided into 100 steps, then he had taken about 10 steps, or at most 12 steps. At this speed, if he wanted to reach the peak of 3 steps, it would really take an epoch. He sighed in his heart. Without the support of medicine, without the life essence of a celestial venerate to refine, his cultivation speed was really slow. And this was because he had obtained more than 200 celestial venerate symbols, which increased his cultivation speed by nearly 1,000 times. Otherwise, how slow would it be? 1,000 epochs to advance 1 step? Ling Han didn't dare to think about it. If that was really the case, he would have to cultivate for a long time to reach 7 steps. He naturally didn't show it on his face. He nodded. I have been in seclusion all this time, so I didn't have time to care about anything. Come, let me introduce you to some brothers and sisters. Meng Dong smiled and didn't waste any time on the previous topic. Okay. Ling Han agreed. This was exactly what he wanted. Although Meng Dong had already advanced 4 steps, Ling Han did not take it to heart. Though his cultivation advanced slowly, it was only his cultivation level that was slow. His power was still increasing at a terrifying rate, especially now that he possessed a complete set of 8th-rate symbols, which increased his power by almost 1,000 times. Who was he afraid of? Meng Dong led the way in front, while Ling Han followed behind. After walking for several days, they arrived at a mountain range, and then entered a cave. It actually had a powerful divine sense isolation effect. He looked carefully, and saw that the walls of the cave were covered with heavenly venerable stone skin. These people were really careful. With these stone plates to isolate the senses of an Empyrean, even the 7 steps return might not be able to discover them. Not long after, the 2 of them arrived at a huge underground cavern. The space was huge, as if another world had appeared here. Meng Dong. There were 6 people there, either standing or sitting cross-legged. When they saw Meng Dong, they all called out to him. Ling Han swept a glance over them. He recognized 2 of them, and they were naturally Wuxia and Ba Duo. As for the other 4, he didn't recognize them at all. However, they were all at the 4th step, and no matter where they were placed, this combination could be said to be very powerful. Come, let's get to know each other. This is Ling Han, our last awakened brother. Meng Dong patted Ling Han's shoulder. Ling Han nodded at these people. I've been waiting for a long time. I finally meet you all. Back then, he had seen Frenzy shoot out hundreds of light spots. Although most of them had been annihilated in the void, there were still about 100 that had entered various planes. Even if only half of them had grown up, there should be about 50 of them now. It was far more than this number. The 4 people that he did not know also introduced themselves. They were Luo Ming, Yang Ke, Wu Junyi and Xiaoying. All of them were very arrogant. This was a sense of superiority in terms of realms. Ling Han, I heard that your ability to fight above your level is very powerful. I want to spar with you, Xiaoying said. They were so hostile that they wanted to challenge him right from the start. Ling Han glanced at Ba Duo. This guy was also full of fighting spirit. Clearly, he thought that he had reached a higher level, and was qualified to challenge him. Sure. He nodded, appearing very indifferent. Unless his opponent was Xi and Chihu, it was really hard for him to be interested. His perfunctory attitude naturally made Xiaoying very unhappy, but he did not say anything. He only revealed a cold smile at the corner of his mouth. Strength was not something to be boasted about. It was something to be fought. Let's fight. He rose into the air. The space here was very large. As long as he controlled it, he could definitely let celestial venerables fight. Ling Han stepped into the sky step by step. He put his left hand behind his back, and then hooked his right hand. Make your move. Xiaoying was even more unhappy. How much did he look down on him? He let out a long roar and charged towards Ling Han. He turned his hands into hammers, and smashed them towards Ling Han. To be able to be chosen by Frenzy, all of them were super geniuses. Even if they were at the 4th step, they would have a certain ability to fight above their level. For example, Xiaoying was only at the early stage of the 4th step, but his battle prowess had reached the peak of the 4th step. It was really shocking. It was unknown if this guy had nurtured a small world in his body, or if he had collected a lot of plain power. Before reaching the sixth step, there was actually not much difference. The more plain power he collected, the stronger the power of a small world. However, if he only collected a dozen or 20 plain power, the power of the small world would quickly surpass him. Ling Han appeared very calm. When Xiao Ying's fist arrived, he only returned the favor. Pung! The power of his fist was too terrifying. As he punched out, endless chaotic aura surged, and the power of Xiao Ying's punch was instantly shattered. However, Ling Han did not take advantage of his victory to continue his attack. Instead, he promptly retracted the power of his fist and smiled calmly at Xiao Ying. The more polite he appeared, the angrier Xiao Ying became. This was because in Xiao Ying's eyes, this was simply blatant disregard. Xiao Ying roared. Wang! He had already activated a celestial venerable symbol. Instantly, it was as if he had transformed into a god, exuding a great aura that could suppress the heavens. First-rate symbol. He shook his hands again. Both his arms turned purple gold, and strange patterns appeared on them. He charged out, waving his arms and sweeping them towards Ling Han. Ling Han raised his hand to receive it. Pung! He felt his arm shake, and actually felt as if it was about to break. Celestial venerables were tempered by intrinsic power. When they reached the seventh step, they would be like the devouring metal body that had reached the great success stage, and they would be indestructible. But before reaching the seventh step, they absolutely could not compare to the devouring metal body. But Xiao Ying's arm gave Ling Han a feeling that it was simply a celestial venerable treasure. If he could cultivate his physique to such a level at the fourth step, then besides those at the seventh step, could anyone else hurt him? Impossible. Ling Han immediately shook his head. He brushed his hand to dispel the numbness in his arm. Then he suddenly said, "You have refined the devouring metal body into your body. No wonder your arm is so strong." "It's not just my arm," Xiao Ying sneered. His figure lunged out, attacking fiercely at Ling Han. Ancient patterns appeared on every part of his body. The end of this chapter. Chapter 2907. A Beautiful Romance. Not only his arms, but every part of Xiao Ying's body had been fused with devouring metal, making his physique incomparably tyrannical. He was unbridled, attacking wildly at Ling Han. This idea was very simple, but even a sixth-step Empyrean would not be able to do this. It seemed that because of his frenzy, he had such a strange ability. Ling Han's strength naturally far surpassed Xiao Ying's. With a casual attack, he sent Xiao Ying flying. There was no need for direct contact at all. Under the suppression of strength, it was too easy. It was like an ordinary person punching a rock. Not only would they not be able to break the rock, but they would also injure their own fist. However, if they wanted to throw this rock out, it was a simple matter. Xiao Ying laughed loudly. "Is that all you have?" Although he was constantly sent flying by Ling Han, he was not injured. Ling Han was speechless. Whose realm was higher? You were beaten like a sandbag by me, but you still had a smug look. Where did this sense of superiority come from? Ling Han wanted to ridicule you, but he didn't know where to start. We're all family. There's no need to fight seriously. Meng Dong tried to mediate. That's right. Wuxia also agreed. Everyone was trying to mediate, so Ling Han and Xiao Ying naturally could not fight. Let's fight next time. Xiao Ying was full of fighting spirit. Whatever, Ling Han said indifferently. Come, let's drink, Meng Dong said with a smile. He called out to everyone. The 8 of them sat down and began to drink. All creations in this world were the result of regulations, and this was also the case for Celestial King tier great medicines. Thus, there was no wine that could make a heavenly venerable drunk, and they wouldn't be affected at all, alright? But when Ling Han took a sip of this wine, he actually felt a sense of dizziness. He was a little strange. Surprised, right? Meng Dong said with a smile. This is wine made from peerless great medicines. Of course it will affect Empyreans. So that was how it was. Ling Han chuckled and continued to taste the wine, but he did not swallow it. These people were all frenzied subordinates. Even if he had already fought his way into the enemy's territory, he still had to be careful. After all, Even if these 7 people did not intend to harm him, if they had anything to do with frenzy, then he could eat them. He only swallowed a little bit of the wine, and the planar power in his body immediately began to circulate wildly, grinding away the wine's power. Immediately, the dizziness disappeared, and the wine turned into some extremely pure power, increasing his cultivation. Ling Han wasn't sure if this wine was made from a peerless medicine, but it was definitely effective in raising one's cultivation. Seeing that the dimensional power in his body was so powerful, Ling Han no longer held back and began to drink in large mouthfuls. Hong, the power in his body surged violently, causing him to feel extremely comfortable. Drink, Meng Dong and the others also frequently toasted. Brother, you and Ba Duo made a great contribution last time, and we never had a celebration feast for you. This time, it's both a welcome ceremony and a celebration feast for you, little brother. Come drink. Everyone urged him to drink, and Ling Han did not refuse. Very soon he appeared to be drunk. Meng Dong and the others persuaded him, and their mouths curled into cold smiles. Little brother, you really disappoint us, Wuxia suddenly said. What do you mean? Ling Han shook his head. Do you really think that after tampering with my things, I will not have any awareness at all? Meng Dong said coldly. Ling Han was shocked. Frenzy actually knew that its things had been tampered with, and could no longer corrode the Firefrost plane? That was impossible. It had to be known that they were separated by a plane. How could Frenzy sense it? It was actually unreliable to say that the Firefrost plane had not been affected, and that was why Frenzy had seen through the flaws. Even if a plane was weakened, it would still take epochs for it to manifest. What was a mere 30 billion years? It seemed that he had really underestimated Frenzy's ability. In other words, he had not passed Frenzy's loyalty test, and now he was going to be the target of a reckoning. He said in an unclear tone. Nonsense, you are completely slandering me. Haha, even at this time, you still want to quibble, Wuxia said coldly. Don't talk nonsense with him, just kill him. Barduo shouted. He hated Ling Han the most. Back then, he had been smashed to the ground by Ling Han with one punch, which had been a great humiliation to him. Meng Dong waved his hand. There's no hurry. This wine has a trace of my true power. Even if our little brother's strength is heaven-defying, he still can't match it. But little brother, don't worry. This true power will not harm your body at all. Instead, it will greatly improve your cultivation. It's just that. You will sleep for a long time, that's all. Barduo could not help but interrupt. I know you are strong, so just to be safe, I even used my true power on you. You are really lucky. Luo Ming smiled insincerely. They were not reluctant, because they all had the ability to absorb the life essence of a celestial venerable and transform it into their own cultivation. So after Ling Han absorbed their true power, as long as they killed him, they could still return it to their own bodies. Of course, there would definitely be some losses, but to be able to get rid of a heaven-defying traitor like Ling Han, this price was naturally worth it. They were not in a hurry. Ling Han was only drunk now, but very soon, he would directly fall asleep. Then it would be even easier to deal with him. The 7 of them looked at Ling Han with mocking expressions, looking forward to seeing Ling Han reveal an expression of anger, unwillingness, and helplessness. This would open up all the pores on their bodies. But Ling Han's next action made the corners of their mouths twitch, because he stretched out his hand, snatched the wine pot, and directly gulped it down. Fuck, did he not want to faint to death fast enough? Meng Dong and the others were speechless. How could there be such a person? Was his brain not working well? Or was he going to break a jar and get himself drunk to death? Snatch it. Meng Dong was the first to react. Ling Han had already drunk enough wine, and giving him more was a waste. Because even if they could refine Ling Han's life essence, there was a problem with the conversion rate, and there would be losses. The 7 of them hurriedly moved to snatch the wine pot. However, even though Ling Han appeared to be drunk and swaying his head, looking as if he would collapse at any moment, it was precisely because he was swaying here and there that he managed to evade all the attacks from the 7 of them. At the same time, he was also gulping down large mouthfuls of wine. Meng Dong and the others were so anxious that their eyes turned red. Every time Ling Han drank an extra mouthful, that was a huge waste. They had not been pained before, but that was the price they had to pay in order to take down Ling Han. But now it was not the case. Quickly put down the wine pot. Meng Dong roared, not stopping his attacks. Ling Han said vaguely, "Why should I put it down? Who do you think you are? Grandpa just wants to drink to his heart's content." End of this chapter. Chapter 2909. A Beautiful Romance. Meng Dong's group of 5 fused together, transforming into a miniature version of madness. Shwa, shwa, shwa. Its entire body was covered in tentacles, and like whips, it lashed out one after another with astonishing momentum. It had a first-rank talisman, and its body was a fusion of 5 people, so its strength naturally increased explosively. At the cost of a celestial venerable's endless lifespan, its strength had increased at an inconceivable rate. Shwa, shwa, shwa. The tentacles lashed out one after another, bringing with them endless darkness and evil. To this space it was like a calamity. Ling Han also used a first-rank talisman, and then he fought the fusion monster head-on. Bang bang bang. In the intense battle, the two sides actually fought to a draw. Ling Han was secretly shocked. It had to be known that 5 fourth-step cultivators working together, even if all of them were at the peak of 4th step, would not be able to push their strength to 5th step. However, not only had these 5 people done it, but they had also reached the middle stage of 5th step, and they were not the slightest bit weaker than him. As expected of madness creation, it had all kinds of abilities. Ling Han, you only have a first-rank talisman, and you can only last for 2 hours. Let's see how you can still fight me at that time, the fusion monster roared. Ling Han smiled faintly. Don't be happy too early. He wanted to see what kind of ability madness creation had, so he did not push his battle strength to the limit. Instead, he calmly exchanged punches and kicks with the other party. However, after 2 hours, the fusion monster still did not have any new moves, which made him very disappointed. Your time of death has come. Meng Dong's fusion monster shouted loudly. It activated another celestial venerable talisman. This was also a first-rank talisman, and it increased its strength by more than 80 times, allowing its battle strength to remain the same. What about Ling Han? He only had a first-rank talisman, and it would be gone after it released its power. Die! The fusion monster opened its huge mouth, and instantly, countless weapons surged out, transforming into raindrops that slashed at Ling Han. Now, this secret technique was unleashed with 5th-step battle strength, and with the first-rank talisman that increased its strength by more than 80 times. Its power was incomparably terrifying. Ling Han shook his head, and all of the second-rank talismans lit up at the same time, illuminating the heavens within his body. Boom! His strength soared by 1,000 times. Bam! He simply threw out a punch, but the weapons in front of him were all shattered at the same time. However, the power of the punch did not diminish at all. It continued to surge forward at an incredible speed. The fusion body didn't even have time to react before a large hole was blasted open in his chest. Black blood gushed out uncontrollably. It wanted to speak, but not a single word came out. Pa pa pa, the tentacles on its body fell off one by one, followed by its flesh and blood. Very quickly, it scattered into a bloody pulp on the ground. Under Ling Han's punch, its entire body had already collapsed. That was a 1,000-fold increase in strength. At the 5th step level, he would definitely be able to kill anyone he saw and kill gods he saw. However, the fused divine soul did not dissipate immediately. Instead, it turned into a final wave of attack that surged towards Ling Han. The speed of this attack was too fast. By the time Ling Han reacted, this attack had already rushed into his sea of consciousness, wanting to wreak havoc and destroy his will. However, there was no need for him to actively circulate it. The power of the trillions of planes in his body circulated in unison, turning into numerous millstones that could crush anything. This shock wave of divine sense was very strong. It was originally enough to pierce through the sea of consciousness of a 5th step, but with the crushing of the millstones, The shock wave was split into millions of tiny fragments. Then they were all shattered, no longer posing any threat. Meng Dong and the others howled in indignation. Yet they were unable to reverse the fate that was already decided. They all dissipated one after another. Ling Han made a move, wanting to capture their remnant souls. However, a black shadow rose up from their blood and transformed into a frenzy. However, its size was even smaller, only the size of a fist. However, the aura it exuded was incomparably terrifying. Even Ling Han could not help but stop in his tracks and stop. This still could not possibly be the main body of frenzy. However, it was extremely likely that it was a projection doppelganger that had temporarily descended with the help of the blood essence of Meng Dong and the others. Frenzy did not make a move. It only stared at Ling Han, waving its countless tentacles. Boom! It suddenly collapsed, dissipating into the air. Only then did Ling Han breathe a sigh of relief. Facing this number one vicious creature of all times, it would be strange if he was not nervous. Not good, I've been tricked. He suddenly reacted. He stretched out a hand to grab, but grabbed nothing, because the remnant souls of Meng Dong and the others had already completely disappeared. Only then did he realize why Frenzy's doppelganger had not made a move. That was because it was impossible for the other party to make a move. It was just an empty shell, and that had frightened it. And why had it done that? Naturally, it was to prevent him from seizing the divine souls of Meng Dong and the others, and reading the secrets on their bodies, including the heavenly venerate symbols, as well as the identity information of the other survivors. Fuck. Ling Han bared his teeth. It had always been him who scared others. He had not expected that this time he would be made a fool of by Frenzy. He felt extremely regretful. Originally, he could have obtained 5 more first-rate symbols. 5, a whole 5. Moreover, these 5 people actually did not contribute a single bit of life essence. Is this because of the influence of Frenzy's consciousness, or is it because these 5 people fused together? Forget it. In any case, I've obtained 2. Moreover, I should be able to read the information of the other survivors from these 2 people. Ling Han began to refine the remnant souls of Xiao Ying and the others, extracting the things he needed from them. As for the heavenly venerate symbols, it went smoothly. Very soon, he obtained 2 first-rate symbols. In addition, there were a number of 9th-rate, 8th-rate, and so on. The duplicates were all separated by him and sealed in the heavenly venerate stone. However, as for the list of survivors, Ling Han was somewhat speechless. This was because the lists obtained from the 2 people were actually completely different. Moreover, there were as many as 200 people on each list, including Zhou Hong and Chu Hao. All of them had become traitors. Of course, this was something that was impossible. In other words, these people had actually long since made preparations for this. Even if they died, it was impossible for others to obtain any truly useful information when searching their souls. If they were hunted according to these 2 lists, perhaps there would really be a few frenzies who had committed crimes. But the majority would be innocent people. At that time, the whole world would be in chaos, and the group of heavenly venerates would also wither to an unbelievable extent. Ling Han shook his head. He also separated Xiao Ying and Ba Duo's first-rate symbols. He was now strong enough, but the Empress and Hu Niu lacked high-level heavenly venerate symbols. Thus he planned to let the 2 girls master these 2 symbols. The 2 girls came out of the celestial visitor residence. After hearing what Ling Han had said, they did not stand on ceremony, and each took 1 heavenly venerate symbol. Then, they continued to enter the celestial visitor residence to cultivate in seclusion. Ling Han set out again, and went to find Zhou Hong and the others. End of this chapter. A perfect anti-theft chapter. Please use the search engine to search for the keywords, and you can read all kinds of novels. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.